Hey everybody, how you doing tonight? Good to see you here. Let me know in the chat if you can hear me okay. Been taking some liberties here in Studio B. Redid some things today, but let me know how it sounds. Let's see who we got in the chat. James Weston's here. Midwest Night Watchers, how you doing? Davy Jones Liker, Chiro Sounds, 13 past midnight, whoever that is. Vixen Doe's here. Thin Lizzie Borden, letting go of a metal growl there. Who else we got? Amy's here. Dice Rollen is here. She'll be joining us here in just a moment. I'm waiting for her to pop backstage. She was having a little internet trouble, I think, but she should be along any moment. Let's see who else. Chris Holm is here. Creepy Cody. There's anybody else there? There's Renee Solon. Good to see you. David Land. Glad you could make it. Lily Pond is here. See the Lily Pond. She's got a little star beside her name there in the chat. She's one of our new members. Memberships for the channel are open. It's on the main screen there up next to the share and like button. If you want to join, feel free. Going to be doing some giveaways for people that are members. And also get custom emojis, a little star by your name, some members only perks. We're going to be doing some members only live streams, and you'll get to see videos before anybody else. You get to see them in pre-release. Who else we got? Davy Jones Locker, Sasha Bell's here. Mark Longoria, good to see you, buddy. Mr. Massier, hope I'm saying that right. Thanks for the 5x5 there. Glad you can hear me okay. Like I said, I've been rearranging things in here today, and I have no idea what to expect. Tiger Lily should be here shortly. She's laying down and resting. She's had a fun and busy day. Special announcement about that. Possibly Monday night, she's going to join us live on stream and going to introduce her to everybody. That's if we can get it set up for Monday night. Debbie McWaters, EVP. I hope that's how you pronounce that's here. And just to let you know, we are broadcasting live on YouTube, of course, because you're here watching it, but also on Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. And let me go ahead and bring our guest up. Here she is, the horror master, Dice Rollen. I can get her to the stream. There she is. Hey, Dice, how you doing?
I'm doing okay. It's cold.
Yeah, it's cold
Not
here
good.
too in Farmington. Actually, we're kind of neighbors. We don't live too far apart, but we had snow this morning. The ground got white, and then by afternoon it all melted off. The sun came out. It was actually pleasant out. I had to go out and go to the store, and now the sun's gone down. It's getting cold again. But glad to have you with us, Dice. I've known them a long time. They have a wonderful, wonderful channel, Dice Rolling. The links in the description. If you mods would pop it in the chat, go there and subscribe. Dice, you're one of those people I don't know how you don't have 1,000,000 subscribers. I first met you when I was doing stuff over on Dezombified. I just started on YouTube and kind of hooked up with them, and they were doing a horror hop. Do you remember that, where it was going from one channel to another to another?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you were one of the channels, and you've got the magic over there, but you're one of those undiscovered gems of YouTube. So hopefully after this you get some new subscribers from our gang here. But it's so
All are
good to
welcome.
see you. It's such a thrill and a pleasure. You're one of my favorite YouTubers, and she literally covers everything horror related: movies, books, games. If it's about horror, they cover it on their channel.
Pretty much.
So,
We're a little
I,
like that, you know.
hey, Anna, good to see you here. I guess the first thing I want to ask you about, the thing that's been on my mind today, and a lot of people have asked me about it. Have
I
you
didn't
seen
kill him.
what they're not guilty? Have you seen the trailer for Renfield?
I did, yeah. I saw the trailer for Renfield, and I saw the trailer for Evil Dead Rising.
Oh, they're both going to be awesome. But what do you think about Nick Cage's Dracula?
I was uncertain. when they announced that. I mean, Nick Cage is gonna do what Nick Cage wants, clearly. Um,
Mm.
but this was not that long after Willy's Wonderland, I think.
Yeah.
And they showed the pictures of him in the velvet little suit, and I was like, "Okay, okay, all right, let me see where this is."
Yeah, and in typical Nicolas Cage fashion, it looks like he tends to play it over the top
Of
and puts
course.
his own spin on it, but it is a modern telling of the Dracula story, and Renfield is in a support group because he
Yeah,
wants out of this toxic relationship with Dracula,
I
and it's
can't blame
just
him.
but I'm really looking forward to it. I think so I talked to you yesterday, and I said I think it's going to be either really, really good or so very, very bad that it's good.
Either way, it'll be entertaining in
It'll
some
be a
way, I'm sure.
win-win either way. So, I'm obviously, or I think anyway, you got into horror from an early age. I would think. Am I accurate on that assumption or no?
Actually, it's kind of a confusing, I guess, history of it. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but here we are. My mom is a Stephen King fan. She loves Dean Koontz as well. My dad is more Anne McCaffrey, dragons, fantasy, stuff like that. So I think my mom kind of paved the way a bit for me. But I avoided horror a lot when I was a kid because it scared me. I was easily scared. So it wasn't until 2 years into my channel when I decided to actually go into it and realized, oh, this is fun. Okay. So I'm a late bloomer, I'm afraid.
No, but it paid off in spades, let me tell you. I was kind of the same way. My mom introduced me to horror when I was in probably second or third grade. She introduced me to Edgar Allan Poe, gave me one of his books, and there I went, and I never looked back.
That's usually how that happens. It's like a drug thing.
Hmm. And just you're always looking for that next thrill, that next fix, that next. Oh, lost my camera there.
Uh oh. We are now speaking from the beyond.
And I'm back. I was, well, we're from the past anyway because there's a delay. By the time this goes out on YouTube, we're in the future,
Oh.
and this doesn't exist anymore. Think about that. It's kind of mind blowing.
Oh, it's too late for this, man. We don't need this existential stuff right here. For anybody on drugs, it's okay.
But I see you've got quite a collection of VHS there behind you. I put a little
Ah,
thing up on the
wait.
screen here. Now,
That's
I'm guessing that's just part of it.
no. Well, you know what? Here, let me see. This is actually. I can't take any credit for VHS. That's more my parents. They have the VHS stuff downstairs. This is all my DVD, Blu-ray horror collection. This is all of it, pretty much, with a few exceptions of those like 5-in-1 DVDs, I believe.
Mhm.
Thankfully, I can display it now because of a good friend who generously sent the shelving to me, so it looks nice.
Yeah, that looks like maybe it came out of a video store or something. I don't know. It's kind of
Yeah.
tall for that, but I worked in a video store back in the '80s, and it was just amazing. Some of the films that came out back then. The first film that I ever saw on VHS was the original Halloween. Guy that I went to high school with, his dad was somewhat of a forward thinker. Bought one of the RCA Select Division. I mean, the thing was a tank. You could bludgeon two or three people to death with it and still play movies. He
Hmm.
bought one of those. They were about $1,000 at the time, and the movies were expensive. I think they were anywhere from like $50 to $100 for a copy of something on VHS.
Yeah.
And there was the first video store in Knoxville, Tennessee, where I lived, was out on Kingston Pike. It was called the Video Station, and they got the idea, hey, we'll buy these and then rent them out and make tons of money. And they're also one of the first that rented VCRs for people that wanted to have a movie party and couldn't afford a VCR.
Hmm.
But as soon as it came out on video, we went, my friends and I, and bought Halloween the day it was released and sat in their living room and watched it. And it was just like, wow, this is great. Because you could pause, you could rewind. It wasn't, it was
Yeah.
amazing. Now, I knew people that had laser discs and things like that, but I wasn't part of my wheelhouse at that time.
I think I skipped that. The Laserdisc part. I
And
learned about it way later.
I had a collection of those at one time. when I lived in Portland, Oregon, they had a Goodwill outlet, which is like the stuff that they don't deem fit enough to go to a Goodwill store. So there's some pretty gnarly stuff in there, but then there's some good stuff too. They call it the bins, and you go and dig through bins and stuff. Certain days, you can take a bag, like a paper shopping bag, and fill it up and pay one price for whatever you can cram in the bag. And they had like tables full of VHS tapes. I found some really rare stuff. And over in the vinyl album section, they had laser discs. So I didn't have anything to play them on, but I like the format. It's big, it got the nice artwork on it.
Yeah.
And I had a few at one time just to look at.
That sounds. I would go. Well, clearly, I'm not above thrifting, or as I like to call it, scavenge hunting.
Mhm.
But that sounds a lot like something that the library in my former county would do. They would do the whale of a used book sale thing, and it
Mhm.
was a huge place where they would have this, and that's where I got a lot of those DVDs.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then also in Portland, there was a kind of a specialty DVD store that had a lot of foreign films and a lot of import stuff that you didn't see it anywhere else on DVD. And they went out of business and they gave everything to Goodwill. And I got some really awesome foreign horror stuff, some Japanese stuff, some French stuff. And what's your thought on the Japanese stuff? They tend to just the nth degree. Some of the most frightening stuff I've ever seen was Japanese versions of films or
Mhm.
Japanese only releases, like the Ring, the original Ringu. That I thought the Japanese version was much better. Same with what was the one where they lived in the apartment on Roosevelt Island and the water was leaking, but it was because there were dead people in the water. Kind of
Huh.
like a foreshadowing of the whole Dark Water, I think it was called, something like that.
Possibly, yeah.
And
Um, Bless the Japanese people because they come up with some weird stuff.
And it's not just
Uh,
horror films, game
no
shows, everything. I've spent a little
products.
time in Japan, and I absolutely loved it. It's a very confusing place, especially in the Ginza district. Some of those places in Tokyo, nothing makes any sense. None of the street names or numbers. It's just kind of you have to ask somebody where things are. And if you don't speak Japanese, that's even more difficult. But that was part of the fun. And the trains in the morning where they have the pushers, the people that shove people into the trains so they can get
Hui.
as many people in there as will fit, probably unsafely. I'd like to have that job. Get in there.
Yeah,
Get in there.
I'm
But
taking my aggression out on you. Good luck.
the interesting thing I found there, a lot of the school kids would buy these like really nice manga books and read them on the train on the way to school. And then when they got off at the stop where the school was, they would just throw them in the garbage. So I would go and get off the train first and stand there by the garbage can. And I'd have this big stack of manga. I had like a suitcase full of manga that I brought back with me that they were just throwing away. And then
Huh.
I sold those to collectors and pretty much paid for most of my trip, I think.
Call this entrepreneurship. Yes.
But they were through with them. So I don't know if they couldn't take them to school or what the whole point was in just tossing them after they had looked at them. But and everything reads from back to front. It's opposite
Yeah.
the way we
Uh,
read it. But
I've read a little. I'm sure not anywhere near what's popular with manga and anime, but I would get some from my library. Looked interesting, and yeah, I discovered that. It flipped me out for a moment because I'm like, okay, how do you? There's pictures, but it makes no sense. Why?
and sometimes they would have like these little the more you know type articles, and it would show it was just pictograms, and I couldn't read the lettering, but I don't know what they were trying to get across, but it looked very strange. There were people praying to goldfish and all this. So I don't know if it's some kind of Shinto or Uncle whoever's in the goldfish bowl now. I don't know, but the it's such a strange place and such contradiction with the old and the ultra modern. They're the like the goth lolitas and stuff that would stroll around, and that's all they do is just dress up in these very expensive outfits and just stroll around. in the city there. So it was kind of amazing. But it'd be a place that easily I could see myself living there, I think.
It seems like a very interesting place in every possible way. I've never been, of course, and I still need to get into more J horror, as they call it, but it
Hmm.
it looks promising. What they do with horror is very
It's
interesting.
amazing. And I can't
Yeah.
remember the name of the film. You can probably tell me though, where they've got the eye retractors on, and they're like knifing somebody in the eye, and that
Hmm.
it's I can't remember the name of it, but that was now this was back in the 80s. I think I was a big Fangoria reader, and they would talk about just how over the top that was, and they would find some little thing like that that nobody else was doing, and just they were talking about the library sale. We had a used bookstore in Oak Ridge called McKay's Used Books. Well, they didn't buy magazines, and sometimes you could find some good books in the free books. Anything that they wouldn't buy, you're more than welcome to dump them in the free bin outside. Well, one time I looked in the free bin and I found a grocery bag, a paper grocery bag full of Fangoria magazines for like the first 24 issues. And some of that, and there was one that was really hard to get, and it wasn't number one. It was like number six or number eight or something like that because of low distribution. It was in
Yeah.
there, and I think I sold that on eBay for like $200. So one person's trash is somebody else's treasure. You just have to know what to look for. But I've
Yeah.
had some good horror finds like that, and there'd also be DVDs and things in there, CDs, anything that they wouldn't buy if people didn't want to haul it back. It went in the bin and freebie.
There's always a good positive right there.
So, is there a particular subsection or subgenre of horror that you collect, or do you just like it all?
I, if you will pardon the term, I would consider myself something of a horror whore. I'll take anything, everything, maybe with a few exceptions, simply because I just don't like the movies. But I've taken what I like to call the archival approach, and I want to try to bring in and protect as many horror movies as I possibly can
Yeah,
through this.
I feel that way about books. I'm not hoarding them; I'm saving them.
Yes, this
They're
is for
rescue.
everyone else eventually, as soon as they realize.
Well, when you
I
pass, they'll have the Dice Rollen Memorial Horror Museum. So there's
yes, that'd be
archive
fabulous.
where people can come in and study the horror throughout the years, and like studious and students of horror can come in and go through your
Students,
collection.
fans, yes, it'll be marvelous. Donate now. We'll start a GoFundMe. It'll be good.
I like that
Uh,
idea. Why is there
yeah,
not a horror museum? I mean, you have wax museums, and you have things that are horror related and haunted attractions and stuff.
yeah.
Why is there not just a full on horror museum? I think it'd be popular. Maybe there is one, and I
I
just don't
think
know about
so.
it.
There's there's one, and I'm forgetting it. I'm sure somebody knows it. I follow them on a few different social medias. There is a place in California. I want to say, I'm not sure. It's not exactly a museum, but it's I don't know how exactly to describe it because they sell merchandise and they'll do different, almost like storefronts or presentations of
And
different
the pop
movies.
up stuff that's so popular in
Yeah.
Los Angeles. Yeah.
There's slashback videos. They're kind of a traveling thing. So I think these little companies or groups, they're trying to do that, and I think that's very commendable because it's really cool to see, even if they don't come anywhere near where I live. It's still cool to see.
Yeah. Just the fact that it's out there that you could go to it if you had the
If we had
want,
the
desire,
means,
and means to get there.
yes, someone buy me an Uber quickly.
I just want to say hi to a couple of people. Bigfoot Michigan Rob is here, and Tiger Lily, my better half, is in the chat. Good to see you, sweetheart. Thanks for joining us. Um, Now, do you could do the horror conventions? Do you do those at all?
I do that every once in a while. When I was in Colorado, I did that semi frequently. Actually, let me see, how many have I been to? Oh, all right. Well, I guess it doesn't necessarily count as just horror because that is so difficult to find in like the Midwest area for some reason. But I went to the Denver Comic Con a few a few times, I think, and they have some horror stuff in there. And then the Colorado Springs Comic Con, they
That,
had
we'll
a
let
lot
that
more.
go.
Yeah, it's
I've got
close.
I've got a friend that collects the Aurora monster models from the '60s and things, and he's recasted a lot of those. And I don't know how he does that and doesn't get in trouble, but he's got like the whole vacuum chamber, and he will make a mold and cast and make so many reissues of his own brand of it, and sells them to collectors. And again, I don't know how he gets away with it, but I think Aurora, that part of it anyway, went out of business and they destroyed the original molds and stuff. So who knows?
Okay,
But he
it could
goes
be
to
some sort of loophole,
there's
like
one
a
big one
retrieve or
in New
something.
Jersey that he goes to, ChillerCon or Chiller something. Do you know what one I'm talking about? Apparently
Possibly.
that's the big one, and it is a just horror con from what I understand. Now
Mm.
in Portland, they had the H.P. Lovecraft Film Festival and Cthulhu Con, so that was kind of horror, but it was a very specific, very narrow niche. But it was interesting nonetheless. I met Victoria Price there, Vincent Price's daughter, and got my picture made with her and stuff. And Vincent Price is one of my idols. I mean, he just had that voice, and he had the whole classically trained actor thing and the accent, but he was like from I think St. Louis or somewhere like that, somewhere that you wouldn't think of
Yeah,
somebody of his caliber being from. And that's just, I love it when people mix it up like that and like, oh, he's got to be British, he's got to be this, he's got to be that.
you're very
Nice.
refined, you know. It's got
He
to be Britain. Nope.
grew up on a farm in Kansas City, outside of Kansas City.
Yeah, they're what's their name? I watch them somewhat frequently, and they do such good work in researching stuff like this. Crap. Well, it's this lovely couple, and they'll go around and they'll tour these different places and take you with them as they're exploring, like where this film was shot. Here's the exact places, and
I
they did
think
one
I
for
know. Is it like a man and wife, and the guy like they wear sunglasses, and she wears like the big
yes,
floppy hat. I can't think of the name of that either, but I love
Grim Horror Collective,
something like that. Yeah,
maybe.
and they're great. They go to like they visit graveyards, they visit all these famous horror film locations, and they will
Yeah.
take stills from the movie and line up the shot and say, "This is where the camera was, and you can see this, and here's that rock, and here's those trees and stuff." And yeah, I think I may still be subscribed to their Patreon. I don't know. I do that sometimes and I'll forget. And then I haven't watched their channel in a while. And another guy that does that is Jordan the Lion, I think. Have you ever watched any of his stuff?
It's very possible.
Now he
Yeah.
doesn't do just horror stuff. He'll do any film or death scene or anything like that. And then of course my buddy Scott Michaels out in LA that I think he still does the dearly departed tours. And then he used to have a museum where he had a lot of artifacts. They had like pieces of Jane Mansfield's car and chunks of the Sharon Tate murder house. Had Pugsley from the original Adams Family had his ashes in there, and just
Mm.
all this cool stuff. But back the very first time that I ever went on the Dearly Departed tour, they actually had an old hearse, and they had retrofitted it with like bus seats, and you could get a dozen people or so in there. And now then they've got like just a regular tour van, and it's I don't know, kind of loses something. I think it's still fascinating, but I liked it when it was a hearse that toured you around, and they have sometimes they have a guest host. They have Allison Ingram who was Nellie Olson on Little House on the Prairie, like one of the most
Okay.
hated characters on TV in the 70s. And she does like a celebrity tour and takes you around to all these places where people perished. But there's just something fascinating about all that to me.
Yeah.
You know, here's the
It's
corner where so and so died, or this is, the bar where William Holden fell off a bar stool and never recovered, all that type stuff. And another place I like to go. I'm sure you've seen Ed Wood, the Johnny Depp version of it.
I haven't seen it all the way through, but I'm aware of it. Yeah.
There's a bar that's in LA that I like to go to. It's called Bar Sinister. It's like a goth bar, and it was featured. The outside of it was featured prominently in that film where Ed Wood's walking along and he sees the Bela Lugosi played by Martin Landau in the funeral place, and he's trying on coffins. It's in that area. But there's a lot of cool horror stuff like that in LA. Some little hidden places like that. Portland used to have a bar called the Lovecraft, and it's called something else now, but it's still like this spooky goth bar, and they have a coffin that you can lay in and get your picture made, and it was one of my daughter's favorite places when we lived out there. But just every day's Halloween. I didn't decorate for Christmas other than Tiger Lily sent me some little ornaments that she crocheted. She made one for me, one for Mulder, my dog, and one for Bittens, which is my black cat that I got on my Halloween birthday. First cat I've ever owned, and a black cat, and I got it on Halloween. I mean, how perfect is that? My mom
It
wouldn't let
was.
me have cats when I was little, and she certainly wouldn't have let me have a black cat because she was superstitious. Now, my daughter had cats, but this is the first cat that's mine. So I'm excited. And a
We got
black
black
one.
cats wandering around. I think one's asleep on my bed. Yes, he is. It's over there. Very
Sandy, my
comfortable.
partner on this channel, at one time, I think she had, I want to say five, it was either 5 or 7 black cats. She's got one less now because Benton's was hers and she gave it to me because when I moved in here before Sandy and her husband moved to Albuquerque, and we were all here. Benton's immediately decided I was her favorite human, and she would come and sleep on me. And she's like, just I got to give her to you. I'll miss her, but she's your cat. So that was the perfect birthday present. But those little ornaments, and Tiger Lily also made them some like little Leviathan looking cat toys with catnip in it. And Mulder, my dog, he identifies as a cat. He likes cat toys and he likes catnip. He'll eat catnip. But that's the only Christmas stuff I had. And well, she sent me a gift package with some stuff, including this wonderful Indiana mug. And but my Halloween stuff is up on the mantle. I've got like a palmistry thing. I've got a book of ghost stories. I've got like a haunted baby doll head and a home sweet haunted home sign. This house is haunted that I live in. There's at least 3 spirits here that I know of. So,
A little bit of a company thing.
and then they were actually here before I got here. At least 2 of them, Sandy had experienced them, but every house I've ever lived in was haunted to some degree. And I came to the conclusion a few years ago that it's not the houses so much as it's me, because I've had roommates before where I moved in, they never saw or heard anything. I get there and all hell breaks loose. Stuff moves around, stuff disappears, stuff flies across the room. And it's not anything I'm consciously doing, but it's
I didn't do it.
always it's not me.
It's the
But
ghost, I
now,
swear.
but now we were talking yesterday when we had Kathina on, the Tennessee lady that has all the weird experiences. You said in the chat that you've had some paranormal experiences.
A few.
What have you seen or heard or experienced?
Well, let's see. There's a few. I'll try to summarize to some extent. The one that's really interesting is the one that happened most recently, and that was after my family and I had moved here. But first, I'll talk about the very first one that I remember. That was at our old place, our old house. And it was ironically on, I guess, the night / really early morning of Halloween and November 1st, which makes sense to me. But, I was not quite asleep. I was just chilling in my bed, which would be facing my bedroom door, waiting for my brother to get done getting ready for bed. We'd, entertain the trick-or-treaters, all that. So it was winding down. My parents were asleep in their room, which was all the way at the other end of the house, with pretty much all of our pets sharing their bed. And I had my eyes closed, and I hear very distinct sound of footsteps over the carpet in the hallway, like someone was coming over to check on me. And I keep my eyes closed, and I'm waiting for the receding footsteps. I don't hear it. So I open my eyes, I don't see anybody there, get up, look down the hall, nobody's there. Look in my brother's room, he's not back yet, he's still in the bathroom. Check my parents' bedroom, they're still asleep with all the animals still asleep. So I was like, okay, hi. uh, that was one. That was one that I thought was kind of interesting. If I had to take a guess, I would imagine that was probably a past family member, maybe my grandmother, perhaps. It wouldn't be surprising to me. Another one is kind of minor, but I still can't explain it. And that is same house, same room. I had this same desk with my computer and everything right beside my bed, and one of those little caps, like the plastic caps off of a USB flash drive,
Mhm.
set firmly on the desk. It was far enough away from the edge to where you couldn't just knock it over. And at some point in the middle of the night, I hear something hit the metal laptop stand I had under the desk. Didn't think anything of it till the next morning, and I'm looking around and I see the flash drive cap under the desk somehow. So that's what it hit the laptop stand. Again, went, okay, cool. What are you trying to tell me? After that, there was the point where my family and I were looking for a house. And we had gone to, let's see how many people recognize this, Dinosaur, Colorado. It's very close to Utah, but there is nothing around. There are 2 dinosaurs. I did confirm this. I was going to be upset if there weren't. But we were looking at this house that was kind of interesting because you had the main house that was up a little hill and like a guest house in a way. And we're in the guest house first. And as I typically do, I went off on my own to check out some of the rooms while the realtor was talking to my parents and my brother.
Hmm.
And I find this like living room, fireplace room, and on the other end from me is a bathroom. So I walk across and I stop halfway because I'm getting a very distinct feeling that there is somebody in that bathroom and nobody should be in this house. So, okay. I keep going forward, and about at the threshold of this door, I am 100% convinced there's somebody going to be standing behind that door when I pull it open, which I did. Nobody's there, and I was like, okay. Went back to my mom and I said, hey, just FYI, just so you know. It was what I would describe as not a malevolent sort of feeling, but the same sort of feeling you would get from someone who doesn't want you in their house. So that was probably a contributing factor why we didn't end up getting that place. And finally, to conclude, the event that happened here. And either way, whether this is supernatural, paranormal, or not, it's not very comforting. Whatever reasoning you can possibly come up with for this. So, at this point, it was maybe April, a year ago, perhaps. I don't put much stock in my ability to keep track of time, but my dad and I were the only ones here aside from the pets. My mom and my brother had left to go back to Colorado for a friend, and it was about 10 p.m. So really dark. We're in a very rural area. No street lights, nothing. It's dark. And I am up here in my room. I'm chilling on my bed with headphones on and everything. My brother's room is right below me, and it used to be a garage, but he has a door. It's almost like a second front door. And I hear and feel 4 very distinct, hard, and almost frantic knocks on the door. I thought it was something my dad was doing until he called for me. So I go down my stairs and he's right there at the door of my brother's room and he says, someone's at the door. Cool. So I go down to his room, turn the light on, and I stand at his door for a minute just listening. I don't hear anything. Once again, fully expecting someone to be on the other side of that door. So I plant my foot maybe half a foot from the door so that if there is someone there, they can't just push the door open. And I open the door. There is no one there. I'm looking around. I don't see anything, no headlights. You would see a car driving away from where we are. I hear nothing, not even the wind. There's nothing. I'm like, okay, shut the door, lock the door, tell my dad there's no one there. Send a text to our neighbor who is across the street from us, asking if either of them had just been over here. And a little while later, I get verbatim, no. Cool. So we slept really well that night. Obviously. I just can't really explain that. There's the chance that it could have been someone trying to case this place because it had been empty for a while. Or Bigfoot or a deer has learned to knock. That's all I've got.
Maybe all the above. 4 knocks. Maybe there was 4 cryptids and they each knocked once. And
Yeah. If it had been 3 knocks, I'm, from everything I'd heard, I would have been, nope, I'm getting the salt.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. 3 is usually something demonic. I was doing a photo shoot in the house I lived in Las Vegas once, and literally from one frame to the next, 3 scratches appeared on the back of a model's leg and
Nope.
started bleeding. There was nothing. There was a brick wall there, but there was nothing sticking out of the wall, no nail, no wire, anything. And she flipped out. She's like, three scratches, 3. And I'm like, well, we'll shoot around and don't worry. She's like, no, you don't understand. There's a demon in here. She packed up her stuff, left, and I never saw her again. But that house was strange. That's the most active haunted house I've ever lived in. There's a video about it on this channel called A Haunting in Las Vegas. But it had been a mob safe house back in the 30s, where it was at that time. There was no strip in Las Vegas. Everything was down on Fremont Street downtown. And it was a couple of miles from there. So it literally would have been in the middle of nowhere. And there was a secret room. You went down the stairs to a landing. There was French doors that opened out on one yard. And then you turned and went down the next steps to the basement, which also opened out on another yard in the far end. But at the end of those steps, there was a bookcase. And you push on the bookcase and it swung open. There's about a 12 by 12 foot concrete room in there. Bare light bulb on the ceiling and a drain in the floor. And I'm pretty sure there were
It'll make a
people
lovely guest room.
that went in there and came out in a suitcase or something.
Yeah,
And
or a few suitcases,
Yeah. But I had a couple of girls that modeled for me that were sisters, and they were from Colorado. I think they were from the Denver area. They just moved to Las Vegas with their parents, and they were really into the occult and paranormal, and they wanted to have a seance. And we did, and they used a Ouija board, and whatever was in there, it was some man, and he was angry, and he refused to talk because he wasn't a snitch. But there you go. And then
even in
later
death,
on, the honor among thieves there. But then I met my neighbor, so a Jewish guy. He was probably in his 70s. I don't know if he was Orthodox or Hasidic, but he wore the hat and the big coat and everything. I was getting my mail one morning. I was standing out by the mailbox, and I felt somebody staring at me. And I turned around, and there's this old man just staring a hole in me. I'm like, can I help you? And he's like, oh, pardon me. I just wanted to see what kind of person could live in such a house. And he had lived there since the 50s, and he knew about the mob house. And he said in the 70s, there was some kind of like religious cult that lived there. And in the basement where my little apartment was in my photo studios, I had 3 studios down there. There was like a little alcove, like where you could imagine a pulpit or something being there. And then 2 little alcoves set in the walls where, candles, I guess, would go. And then between that room and another room, there was a window inside the house. It wasn't a glass window. It was just a wooden window, but it would slide up so you could, pass things into the. But my roommate heard people talking down there one time, thought I was having a party. And sometimes when I'd have those portfolio events, I'd have a DJ and have it catered and have a dozen models in there doing pictures. and she thought I was having something like that, and she came down to like join in, and by the time she got to the first landing and then started to go downstairs, she noticed it was dark, took a couple of steps, and then it went silent. She went on down, turned on the lights. There's nobody there, hadn't been anybody there. She called me on my cell phone. I was out at Red Rock Canyon where I'd been since before daylight, doing a product shoot for a boot company. And I'm like, no, I haven't been, I've been home since before daylight. And she's like, is it okay if I come out there where you are? And I'm like, sure, come on. But for a few days there, she slept with her lights on, and she made me sleep upstairs in the living room on the couch because she was afraid of whatever was in the house. But I heard, saw, and heard things all the time. But I think she was in denial about it till that happened, and then she started noticing things more and more. She had a little dog that sometimes he would just freeze in the hallway and start letting out this unearthly whine. And it was like something was holding him in place. He couldn't move. And I would yell like, let him go, leave him alone. And then all of a sudden the paralysis would break and he would take off like a shot. And then he got in the habit of when he wanted to eat, to avoid that hallway, he would go out the doggy door in her room, go around the back, come in the doggy door where the French doors were, up the stairs and into the kitchen. He would not traverse that hallway because there was something in, and in that same hallway, heard people talk about in a haunted house how they'll walk through a cold shaft of air. Well, I was in that hallway one time, and a moving shaft of air went through me, and it was the coldest cold I've ever felt. And this was in the summertime in Las Vegas, and the house
Mm.
wasn't really that cool. It just had a swamp cooler. Do you have the pleasure of a swamp cooler where you're at there in New Mexico?
No, I'm afraid no, not currently. Used to at our old house, but
I've,
here
I've,
is. I mean, I've got that little cooler, but it's
I've
only because
got
I'm on the second
one
level.
here, but in Vegas, that house had two, and if you stood right under the vent, it was like somebody like just like blowing on you. It didn't do much cooling, but the one here seems to work pretty well. All summer, I mean, it was over 100 degrees a lot of days, and never turned on. Have central heat and air. Never turned the air conditioning on. The swamp cooler was enough. So I knew somebody in Las Vegas that had an old station wagon, and he had a swamp cooler on the roof of his car. It looked like the Ecto One from Ghostbusters. It was this old
Hmm.
beat up car, and he wouldn't let you roll the windows down. No, no, the swamp cooler is working. But again, it was like it might have been 3 degrees cooler in the car than it was outside. But
I
there's
hope
some
we can try.
strange people out in the desert. So now the area where you live, I won't dox you and call it out, but is that
Oh,
considered
good
high
luck finding it
desert?
anyway.
Is that considered high desert up there too?
No, it's more we've got a lot of the reserves and like national forests not too far from
Oh,
here, so
okay.
there's a lot of trees and stuff. It's really not deserty. Yeah, this reminded us more of, as my mom would say, Colorado than Colorado did. So it's
I
really
mean,
not that dry. Thankfully, I
now,
couldn't do
now
it.
here, this is the desert. I mean, my yard is sand and rocks. Although I found some really cool looking rocks out there, but I mean, just a little. I'm real close to Choke Cherry Canyon. There was a famous murders there back in the 70s, and then Navajo or Diné shaman put a curse on the people that did the murders, and they all died mysterious deaths. So not too far from Four Corners, but there's tales of skinwalkers and shapeshifters and things out here. But you go up there, it's like you're in the Flintstones or something. All these weird looking rocks and little scrub brush, sagebrush, tumbleweeds. I saw my first tumbleweeds out here. They probably had them in the Mojave when I lived out there, but I never saw one.
I
So
think I've seen some tumbleweeds since we got here, and I was like, wow.
yeah, that was me. It was like, holy cow, tumbleweeds. And Sandy's telling me like, no, they're invasive. You want to get rid of them. And I said, no, I'm going to start a tumbleweed farm in the backyard because they just when they roll along, they drop seeds. And there was a lady, I think she was on Etsy. She started selling tumbleweeds, kind of like a pet rock type thing, a pet tumbleweed. She had them in small, medium, and large, and she ended up with like a 7-figure mail order business selling tumbleweeds to
I'm
people.
in the wrong business.
So yeah, I want to start a tumbleweed farm. I mean, how hard could
Yeah.
it be? You just let them roll around and do their thing and pick
Just
them up,
catch them when you need a ship.
catch them, box them, and mail them off. But it is strange out here. It's a different kind of strange. I'd spent a lot of years in the Pacific Northwest and Bigfoot country up there, Sasquatch, and all over Mount Rainier, Olympic National Park, Olympic National Forest, Yakima, Aberdeen. I don't know if you were a grunge fan or not, but I really enjoyed that trip to Aberdeen. Saw Kurt Cobain's childhood home and the
Mm.
bridge there along the muddy banks of the Wishkah, like the album says, where he used to sit and try to figure out how he was going to get the hell out of Aberdeen. And the bridge is kind of a impromptu memorial to him. It's all spray painted and everything, and they made a little park there. And then I think the city eventually gave money or to it or something. But I got a video coming out about it, and I felt
Yeah.
his spirit there. And what I didn't know at the time was when he was cremated, part of his wishes were that his daughter spread a third of his ashes in the river under that bridge, and it's a tidal river. It raises and lowers, so technically, twice a day, Kurt Cobain comes back under the bridge. Actually, his ashes are probably way down, no telling where. But like I said, in theory, they were scattered under the bridge, and it's an eerie feeling. But that part of Aberdeen, it's very working class. I mean, like when you look across the river, there's all these ramshackle houses and old rusting cars in the backyard, and men in T undershirts, the A-frame shirts, drinking beer at 10 o'clock in the morning. And I can see how you would want to get out of there.
It's fair.
But yeah, he even tried to do himself in once. He laid down on the railroad tracks and was heard the train coming, and he's like all tensed up and just waiting. Well, it went down the opposite siding, the track on the other side, and that was when he's like, okay, I'm not going to go out like that. I'm going to do something to get out of here. And then he was friends with Buzz Osborne from the Melvins. They went to high school together, and that's how it got started. I don't know. It's just fascinating.
Yeah.
But I'm like that by like the horror sites and stuff. I want to see where people grew up. I want to see where they died. I want to go where they've been. And I'm not so much an investigator as I am just a day tripper, a legend tripper. I just like to go and soak in the atmosphere. I'm not
Yeah.
there expecting anything to happen, but I do stuff like that. Things I've heard in songs. I stood on a corner in Winslow, Arizona. But there was no girl in a flatbed Ford slowing down to take a look at me. So
Mm.
you lied to me, Don Henley. But
This was a one-time thing. It was a fluke. Thanks.
but now, was there much of a change in elevation for you when you moved to New Mexico?
A little bit. I mean, here it's higher than it was in the Denver area where I had grown up, but I was kind of used to the higher elevation than most places, so this wasn't too harsh. But I have noticed a few different things where I'm like, "Oh yeah, lungs. Those are nice to have, aren't they?"
If they work.
Yeah, if they work all
Now,
right.
when I lived in Portland, I lived inner southeast, right on the Willamette River, and moved around a couple of different places. But I lived anywhere from 6 feet to 36 feet above sea level. I get out here, and Farmington is, I think it's 5,370 feet. So
Yeah,
big change in elevation. And it took me a couple weeks to adjust to it. And I was telling you about this. Then we went up into Colorado to cover a missing persons case. A mountain runner, a trail runner that runs up a mountain. I have mad respect for anybody that can do that. He had gone missing on Molas Pass, which is between Durango and Silverton, and the elevation up there is almost 11,000 feet. And I got stupid. I couldn't breathe. It was like I was getting tunnel vision. My chest
mm.
hurt, pounding headache, and I couldn't even get through the video. I was like, "We're here on location," and
Send help.
Sandy's like, "Yeah, we've got to take you down to Silverton. There's an outfitter down there where they sell the canned oxygen."
Hmm.
and she said it's right there on Main Street. Well, immediately I thought of the Bob Seger song, so I started singing "Down on Main Street," and I was out of my mind. And I've had people tell me that's the Rocky Mountain High that John Denver was singing about. I always thought it was
Something like
Puff
that.
Puff Pass, but it was the altitude
Could
that
be a
made
nice
me
mix of both.
silly. But I got a can of oxygen and it had like 200 breaths in it, and I'm literally doing the video and hiding the can and saying a few lines, and then I was ready to get down off there because it just is very unpleasant. And the altitude sickness is a real thing and not something to play around with. People have died from it. I think they were probably higher than that, but
Yeah,
not my idea of a
it's
good
it's a health
time
effects.
to die at a high altitude at a gravel parking lot for a campground where somebody went missing. It's just like it's one of
Wouldn't be
those.
good
I
report.
think he's in the water. They found his cell phone on the trail, but at the time he went missing, the Animas River, which runs right through there from Colorado down into Mexico, it was swollen by the runoff and the monsoon rains and stuff. And I think he somehow ended up in the water, whether somebody put him there or he fell in there or, been over to get a drink and lost his balance. I don't know, but I have a feeling he's in the water. And there was another missing person case right around the same time from around the same area, a little bit farther closer to Durango. And I think they did find him in the water. So scary place. But I like Durango. Have you ever been there? You're frozen. Oh, there you are. You're
Yeah,
hypnotized. You've been
as that happens every
hypnotized.
once in a while. Yeah.
It's a little
Satellite,
spinning
yeah.
circle. Watch the spinning circle. You're getting sleepy.
Mm,
Send all your money to Steve Stockton,
mm.
Farmington, Mexico. But
Donate now.
have you been to Durango? That was my favorite
Uh,
place I've been in Colorado so far. I haven't been that many places. And again, the aliens have overtook Dice. They are possessed. They warned me that this might happen during the thing, so we'll wait for them to come back. In the meantime, how's everybody doing? I haven't howdied with the chat here. Got my new setup, and yeah, I just got a message that we're like buffering and our lips don't match up. It's the Chinese horror film version of 13 Past Midnight tonight.
mm. Welcome to Unfriended.
But yeah, in Durango, there's some older hotels up there that are supposed to be haunted, and it's a funky little college town. Had a great vibe, kind of a lot of hippies and aging hippies and that sort of thing, and sort of my people. I
Yeah,
was never really a
I
hippie.
think
I was more of a
I might
goth
have gone
punk
through that.
metalhead, but
Mm,
the hippies are accepting of anybody. I wanted to be a hippie when I was 6 years old, 5 years old. I peed in my dad's work boots to protest the Vietnam War, and didn't work. Just didn't stop the war machine. Instead, it brought my mom's war machine down on my backside. But
mm.
my dad worked out at Oak Ridge National Laboratory. He was a scientist out there, and I knew he did something to do with the war. And I was upset about Vietnam. I was watching it on TV with Walter Cronkite, and then they showed the hippies protesting. I thought, that's me. I want to do that. So, but peeing in my dad's work boots was not the form of civil disobedience that was most acceptable in my household.
Maybe not. Well, you didn't set anything on fire, so that's got to be a bonus.
Well, not that time, but
Mm.
I set a lot of things on fire, but not to protest anything. I did that out of sheer delight. I think I was a little pyromaniac when I was little. I would spend hours putting together these little shoebox houses with little tissue windows and things in. I mean, sometimes I'd have big apartment buildings if I got big boxes from the grocery store, decorate them, and then set fire to them. Just put a tiny little fire in them, and then watch the smoke start rolling out the top of it, and then the flash over, and then it's like, yes. But, I was a weird little kid, as you can imagine. But we lived out in the country, and you either had to haul your garbage to the dump, which is about 20, 25 miles away, or you could burn your garbage. And as soon as I was old enough, I volunteered for that chore. And back then, my mom used Aquanet in the old aerosol cans.
Oh
And
God.
sometimes there was cans that weren't quite empty that made it into the garbage, even though and that was because it would produce a fireball. I remember once I was burning the garbage, and one of those cans went off. A flaming fireball shot over the house and landed up in the trees where I had my swing set. I'm like, yes. I'm lucky I didn't burn anything down, but obviously I've grown out of it. I hadn't started any fires. I've never been convicted of any arson.
Mm. This is always the key. Are you an arsonist? No, not that they can
I've never
prove.
been convicted. Yeah, there you go.
Oh,
No Bart Simpson. I didn't do it. Nobody saw me do it. You can't prove a thing.
yeah.
Now that brings me to a nice segue here. What do you think of those Treehouse of Horror episodes of The Simpsons?
Those are actually, I think, pretty much the only episodes that I've watched of The Simpsons. I didn't grow up with the Simpsons like a lot of other people, but I was intrigued by the Treehouse of Horror episodes, and I think they're rather fun. I don't think I've seen a lot of the newer ones,
Yeah.
but some of the originals I thought were rather
And I'm
funny,
kind of the
especially
same
the
way. Never was
Shining.
a big Simpsons fan. I was beyond the age that to enjoy that when it was popular. But I love those episodes, and those are some of the only ones I watched. And some of the other horror TV shows I love. Are You Afraid of the Dark? Were you ever a fan of
Mm.
that?
My grandmother wanted me to avoid Are You Afraid of the Dark and Goosebumps because she knew that it would probably scar me as a kid.
And
So,
she was right. And here you are.
yes, and here we are. So glad that she took the time to make sure I wouldn't turn out to be a delinquent.
Reprobate horror
Yeah.
fan. How dare you?
Yes, delayed reaction. So sorry.
But I was never really afraid of the dark or anything when I was a kid. But I got that way. There was my nearest neighbor. He lived a couple of miles away. We lived down the country. He had three older sisters in their teenage years, and I wasn't afraid of the dark till I started going over there at night, and they would tell like all these frightening urban legends and things, and I'd be scared to walk home. I'd have to call my parents, come and pick me up. It's dark, and they're like, so, and I'm like, come and pick me up. But yet, this was the same kid. Me and some other guys. There was a graveyard down the road, an abandoned graveyard, and we built a clubhouse in there, right in the
Why
middle of
not?
an old graveyard. I mean, it was trees and weeds and moss covered. I think the newest graves in there were probably from the 1900s, early 1900s to maybe 19 teens. But we built a clubhouse in there, and
Oh, I froze for a minute.
and we're back. We were
Oh,
transported to somewhere the not here, the upside down.
the other dimensions.
And more horror TV. What do you think of Stranger Things?
I like Stranger Things. My brother was the one that got my whole family into that. So now we'll watch episodes together so that we can all be caught up. I quite like Steve. Steve is my favorite character.
Yeah, 11's mine, but I love the way it's got that whole '80s vibe. But one thing, the quandary, and I've heard other people talk about this. Winona Ryder is in it. She's one of the main characters. Well, the video store, if the series goes long enough, there's going to be a point where there are Winona Ryder video movies, videos on available in the video store. How do you think they'll approach that? Will they just not mention it, or
They'll either not mention it or they'll kind of make a joke about it with
like
her
this
saying,
looks
"Hey,
like
you
you,
look
mom?
like yeah,
Yeah, this looks
is
like
this
a
what you
young
looked like when
you."
you were younger? What is that?"
Got a question here in the chat. What is your? Let me. I lost it here. 1 second. It actually was texted to me. What is your favorite horror and why? and I need to
Like
pick.
horror movie or horror subgenre?
Now, the question was just, what is Dice's favorite horror and why? So you pick.
I think I could answer both. My favorite horror, as far as like horror movie, usually is a battle between two, which is Phantom of the Paradise and The Frighteners. Those are my favorites,
I love
and they
Phantom
always
of
have
the
been.
Menace.
Very few people hear about both, much less Phantom of the Paradise, but I do recommend both. As far as subgenres go, for some reason, paranormal, that's just my go-to if I can't quite decide what specific kind I want to go for. Paranormal is just easy for me
Yeah.
because it piques my interest.
Yeah, I think the question may have been, do you like the gothic horror? Do you like the classic horror? The
Ah,
Hammer films? Do you like the slasher films or the psychological? I'll throw it out there that way. I don't know if that's what this person meant or not, but we'll
all of
approach
it.
it that way.
All of it.
There's the answer. They like it all.
Mm,
So
not
next
too
question.
picky. Yeah,
Yeah,
next question.
I made for whatever reason, StreamYard doesn't have a dark mode, which I hate. And every time at the end of the stream, what could we do to make it better? And I'll type in all caps dark mode,
Dark
please.
mode.
Because if I go full screen, then I don't get the reflection on my glasses, but I can't see the chat. Now that you can
Yeah.
see the chat, and there's this horrible reflection on my glasses. I've got a laptop over here that I can read the chat on, but then I'm constantly looking over here instead of into the camera, which is the whole point.
It's like
Tiger
multi-setup.
is trying to get questions going. Apparently, we were just gabbing too much, and they want me to
I'm
ask
easily distracted. I'm
questions.
sorry.
Same here. I forget. We're just chatting. We've been friends for a couple of years, even though we haven't talked much recently.
There's
Uh,
lots of different things going. Oh,
Chris Holm wants to know if there's any anime that stands out for you, Dice.
unfortunately, I am not a huge anime kind of person. I do want to do some exploring with that, especially I know there's a lot of horror anime that's just off the walls. I just haven't gotten into that yet, so I'm afraid I don't really have much of a taste when it comes to anime currently.
That's kind of me. I could just never get into it. Now, there's some really weird stuff, like you said, some of the tentacle stuff, and then it gets over into the hentai, which that's a whole other ball game. But
That's
there was
some
there
different
was
Lovecraft right there.
yeah, there was a very very different anime that I watched. I don't know if it's classified as hentai. It's called Bible Black. Have you ever heard of that?
It sounds familiar.
It's about these girls that go to an all girls school. They find some book of demon spells or something like that hidden, and they get it out and they unleash all these demons. Of course, the demons attack them in the most unnatural ways. But other than that part, the storyline was really good. And I would like to see somebody take that and run a different direction with it and leave the tentacly invasion stuff out of it. But I guess maybe that's why it's popular.
Possibly.
And maybe you can decipher what Chris Holm is talking about here, but do you cover
Tabletop.
any DOW, VTM, WWA on the tabletop front? Because I know you're into the gaming.
Yeah, I do some horror gaming, but that's typically like PC video games kind of stuff. So I'm afraid, aside from watching some tabletop sort of stuff, I don't really cover that much on my channel.
But now you do the Let's Play videos though with some of the like the walkthroughs of just regular video games and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Regular
yeah,
horror
I'll
video
do
games, I'll
those.
qualify that. And this
I've made a
you do
separate
some
channel for that
narrations.
now.
Okay, well,
Yeah,
uh, what's the name of
just
that channel? And I'll have one of the
oh
mods drop a link to it. In fact,
that
you were in the
oh what's
chat
it?
earlier. I'll just make you a mod here. I've got 4 computers, a laptop, and an iPad,
Everything's
and
on.
mice everywhere.
Cool.
Let me go back and find you in the chat, and I'll make you a mod, and then you can drop the links yourself.
I think you did. Yeah, I got the I have the wrench of
You have
power.
the wrench. You have the wrench of power. Wield it wisely.
Uh,
With great
yeah.
power comes great responsibility.
I've never been responsible. I don't know what you mean. It's I just decided to separate the two types of content because I realized that, of course, some people may subscribe to my regular channel for my reviews and know nothing or have no interest in gaming. So I just moved it over to what I call Doc Gameplays because Doc is a nickname that a dear friend of mine gave me, and it kind of works. So eventually we will be getting stuff up on there.
That's one of your personalities.
Yes, just one.
I like that. You
Thank
wear
you.
many hats, literally. I've seen you with some nice headwear on before.
There's a nice little top hat to bring some class to the subject, you know.
And Tiger Lily says she definitely likes the sci-fi biology type horror, like the outbreak stuff, the Robin Cook type stuff.
Mm.
And then she's also mentioning the Mist here. That's a good one.
Ah, yes. Yes.
And there she dropped the link to her gameplay channel if you want to go
It's
watch
very
that.
barren over there, I'm afraid, right now, like I said, but eventually, as I have promised previously, I will be getting into Resident Evil The Village, I believe, next.
And
Probably.
Chris Holm, Silent Hill remake, yay or nay?
I say a tentative yay, because hopefully that'll bring it kind of back to some amount of popularity. I think it's an interesting game, so hopefully they don't mess it up too much.
Now, do you play any of the classic, like the old 8-bit or 16-bit games?
I have been saving a lot of those to actually do on some Let's Play videos because I think that'd be fun. There's a few 8-bit games that I remember playing on an Atari that my dad has. That was my first gaming experience. So I'm somewhat familiar with 8-bit.
The first horror game that I can remember, I had the Friday the 13th for the original NES. That was a hard game. And
I've
basically
heard.
you had to go into the cabins and stuff and avoid Jason, but then he'd just show up and chop you to pieces.
Uh,
But my favorite horror game of all time still is, to some degree, was when the Turbo Graphics came out, Splatterhouse. Have you ever played that one?
I don't think I've played it, but I think I've probably heard about it.
That was I still think it stands the test of time. And although not really a horror game per se, Satan's Hollow, there was an arcade game where you had to defeat the devil. That one was
Uh,
fun. Yeah, Chris Holmes says Friday the 13th on NES. That was crazy. It was. It was hard. I don't think I ever got anywhere close to beating it. From what
I'm
I
not
can
very
remember.
good when it comes to beating games, but we try. You know, it's an experience. You're
I
experiencing
just
it
like
with
to
me.
play. That's right.
Yeah,
You're experiencing the game.
I don't claim to be good. Just
And
hey,
I don't think it's a horror game, but I think Lizzie Borden was telling me about a game she was watching somebody play, or maybe she plays it. It's called Stray, where you're a stray cat and you just kind of
oh
wander
yeah,
around. Have
that
you ever
was
played
quite
anything like
popular
that?
last year.
Yeah.
I haven't played that one, and one of the main reasons I hadn't played that one, it looks beautiful. It looks like a beautiful game. It's gotten a lot of really good reviews, but there's
Just
two
the
reasons why I
artwork.
haven't played it.
It's like playing a painting. What are the two
Yeah,
reasons that you haven't played it?
well, one is about the time where I was considering whether or not I would play it. I lost my cat, and he was an orange
Oh,
tabby. So I was like, let's not do that because I heard that the ending was kind of sad. So I was like, maybe not today. Thank you. Maybe some other time.
David Lance says the Goonies on NES. I don't remember ever playing that one.
Goonies.
Are
Hmm.
you a Goonies fan?
Neutral. I think I enjoy
Not
it
really
every
a
once in a while.
horror film per se, but there's some
Exactly.
elements in there, I think. And when I lived in Oregon, I can't remember the name of the beach now, but it was just about an hour away where that was filmed. And the the house is there, the Goonies house, and the Portland or the Oregon Film Museum is there, and it was the jail that was used in the movie The Goonies. That I can't remember bad guy's name, but they broke out of there.
Yeah.
And but so it's not Cannon Beach. Anyway, it's over there. And Halloween Town. Are you a fan of those movies? Disney movies.
Uh, I have enjoyed them. Yes. They're maybe not my favorite Halloween season films, but if it's on, I'll watch it.
I've never seen them, shame to say, but I lived in St. Helens, Oregon, and that is Halloween Town. That's where it was filmed. And every year in the month of October, the whole town takes over and becomes Halloween Town. And Marnie, whoever that is, I don't know if that's the actress's name or if that was one of the characters.
That's the
She
main character, I think. The
usually is the
young girl.
grand marshal in the Halloween parade. And they ride around in a convertible. She sits on the back and waves at everybody. But they really have they put on a nice show. And the people there in the town decorate more for Halloween than they do for Christmas, which I think is awesome. And also the exterior of Bella's house from Twilight is there in St. Helens. Now that's probably a touchy subject. There, are you? Where? How do you stand on Twilight?
Well, I was kind of in the front line, so to speak, when it was started to become popular before the movie came out. So I read the book and thought that the mental imagery was kind of cool. Uh, and then watched the first movie and was like, okay. I've kind of leaned more on the side of no, no. If you enjoy it, great. That's wonderful. I'm
That's
glad.
me.
But
If it turns you crank, go for it. But my vampires don't sparkle. I'm sorry.
no, and that's not a werewolf. That's a shapeshifter. What is that?
And to me, Bela Lugosi would just always be the quintessential Dracula. There is no comparison. Although Christopher Lee did a good job, and there's been some good ones out there, Frank Langella. But and again, I'm interested to see what Nick Cage does with it. But
I'm sure he'll have his own version.
like I said, it looked pretty over the top in that trailer. The makeup and everything. Now, how do you feel about that when they remake classics and put a modern spin on them? Yay, nay, for it, against it, in between,
Uh,
don't care.
I'm kind of, I think, neutral about it because I'm really not one of those people to go, no, you can't do that. How dare you? I just want to see what will happen, and then we'll make a decision on if it was a good idea or not. Because there have been obviously numerous versions of Dracula throughout the years that are both good and bad, but it just depends on what the actors and the director and everybody involved does with it. If they're self-aware, it can be fun.
And then Lizzie said, Bela Lugosi is dead, indeed.
This is true. A catchy song.
Bauhaus taught us that.
This is
Um,
true.
Creepy Cody says vampires are supposed to be soulless undead demons. LOL, not hot boyfriends.
No, not quite. Well, not sullen, angsty, sparkly, sort of red flag boyfriends. We'll put it that way.
But the movie that's coming out, Renfield, my favorite Renfield of all time was Tom Waits in Bram Stoker's Dracula, whatever year that came out.
1990 something.
I figured you would know. But that's another thing I love about your channel when you do those trivia things and talk about 26 amazing things you never knew about this movie or that movie, even some of the Ernest movies and stuff. It's just like that's just so cool to see somebody covering those and talking about them. Now, is that something you just knowledge that you have in your head, or do you like bone up where you go watch it again and look for little things that you can point out to people?
Oh, all the above. Some things I just pick up along the way through delving into horror. I'll hear something and just retain that. But typically, what I'll do is this is just something that I would do for myself because I was curious. Just finish watching a movie and I'll go, okay, well, is there anything interesting that happened that we wouldn't know about? So I would go looking for that. And I think at some point, Minty is a channel that does this solely for so many different
I love
movies.
watching Minty, and
And he's awesome.
to draw some parallels there. But were you doing it before Minty? You may have been.
Oh
I
no,
don't.
Minty was doing it way before me.
And he's like
Full credit to him.
Australia or New Zealand or somewhere like that. But he
Something,
gets
yeah.
off into some areas and just wow, he has to really dig for some of that stuff, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But,
Well, he was a big inspiration for me to start that because I just thought, yeah, I'm the nerd. I'm doing this for me.
I'm going to do that.
And yeah, and I saw him because I was looking for more stuff. I forget what it was about. And he made this video, and I thought, wow, that looks really cool. This sets a whole mood for the whole thing. All right, fine, I'll do it. So I started to do that as a sister video to my reviews, if there were enough facts to be had for a movie. Sometimes there isn't.
Yeah, sometimes he'll come up with something. I'm like, he's just making that up, and then it'll bother me to the point that I'll go watch, and I'm like, by golly, he was right. It was like that, or they did say that, or they did do that. And I'm like,
Yeah.
wow.
My goal is always to try to find something, at least one thing that even a fan of a movie hadn't heard of before. And I think my best success with that was my Rocky Horror Picture Show facts video, because I had a
I
few
haven't
people go, I
watched
didn't know
that,
that.
but I want to watch them because I'm a big Rocky Horror Picture Show fan. When I was in high school and college, I went and saw that twice a weekend, every weekend for 3 or 4 years. And I still remember all the things that you shot back at the screen. And
Yeah.
I remember when it came out on DVD, I rented it and I played it at home. And it's just like, this is stupid. It was the audience participation that made the film. That was what made it fun. And small town, there wasn't much to do at midnight except you go to the midnight movie. And the Rocky Horror Picture Show was playing, and then they'd play like, The Wall or something like that. But I'd always go to Rocky Horror. But that's one that I hope they don't remake. That I hope they leave it alone.
They did something of well, people call it a remake, but I saw it as more like a loving homage by fans, shall we say. So if you look at it that way, maybe it seems a little bit better. But there was a 2009 made for TV with Cox. I forget her name.
Courtney
But
Cox.
no, Laverne Cox.
Oh,
That was her name. So sorry. But she played Frankenfurter. And I thought it was interesting. Obviously, nothing's going to touch the original, but
yeah.
she got Tim Curry's
was
blessing.
Classic. But trying to look at the chat here. Chris Holmes said his childhood mall was the mall in the movie Selena. Now it's a rack space office complex.
Yeah.
Bram Stoker's Dracula. Somebody mentioned that. Now, what's the series that they're doing now that's kind of a respin on Interview with the Vampire?
I think it's called exactly that, actually.
It is that, I think, but it's the series, and
Yeah.
it's Lestat from somebody else's perspective.
Yeah.
And I kind of, from what I've seen of it, I don't remember why I stopped watching it, but I kind of like it. Tiger Lily, is that one we were watching together? But another one we've been watching lately is the I can't say it, Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities. There's some good stuff on there. That reminds me of the old Night Gallery with Rod Serling.
As I have a lot on my to watch list, I promise.
That's the way mine is. It's like stuff's been on there so long it's not even on there anymore, and it's like,
It's been canceled 2
I
years
need
ago.
to watch this. Yeah, that's not on here.
You're gonna have to find that somewhere else. Thank you.
But Anne Rice, were you an Anne Rice fan?
I can't really. Well, I can't really say that I've delved very much into Anne Rice's work, so I'm gonna say no. But
liked
I
the
certainly
Mayfair
admire what she's done.
Witches and some of those, but yeah,
Yeah.
she did kind of her own thing there. And years ago, she kept a public phone number listed in New Orleans, and occasionally she would, I guess, plug it in because otherwise it would ring all the time. But she would plug it in and just randomly pick up and talk to somebody. And one time I actually spoke to her, probably in the mid 80s or something. I'd kept the number and I would call it every now and then and just ring and ring and ring. And then once she picked up, and I don't even remember, I totally fanboyed, and then sort of lost my mind, but I did speak briefly with her.
That's
But
cool.
I like the Mayfair Witches and some of that stuff as well. But she got off into some just strange stuff and not necessarily horror, but just stuff that I didn't care for and kind of lost that. Now, who are some of your favorite horror authors? Maybe some of the more obscure ones that you could turn people on to.
I don't know if I really have very much in terms of obscure because I'm trying to do better with my literature consumption. Stephen King, of course, is a classic. I've got several of his books. My mom has a lot more than I do. uh, I've got just some of the classics of Alfred Hitchcock, some of the stuff that he's done. Um, the kind of books that I tend to like are the ones that will talk about the history or the things you may not have known about certain horror movies. I just think those are really cool. Like the one that Adam Rockoff, I believe is his name, did. The horror of it all, I think. Shock Factor is another one. So stuff like that I quite
Uh,
enjoy.
I used to
There is
enjoy Psychotronic Encyclopedia Film by Michael Weldon. Do you remember that one? That talked about all
possibly.
these weird, obscure B movies like from the 50s, 60s, and 70s with all these weird monsters. And it was stuff that you'd never heard of and probably wouldn't be able to find
Hmm.
except from a collector or somebody that had dubbed off copies of it. I like the really obscure stuff like that, even if it's bad, like The Undertaker and His Friends or something. Have you ever seen that one?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
It's kind of comedic, but it has aspects of horror in it. Or the Lemon Grove Kids Meet the Monster. Are you
Hmm.
familiar with Cash Flag? I can't remember the actor's real name. Strickler, Dennis Ray Strickler. He did some kind of off the wall horror stuff.
Hmm.
Well, he went out to Vegas when and to basically retired. He had a video store that had a lot of his films and really obscure stuff that you couldn't find. Well, one of the models that answered one of the cattle calls I'd had on a model website that I used to be on that I can't think of the name. One model place, Model Mayhem. Her name was Strickler or Steckler. I'm sorry, Steckler. And I was messaging back and forth to him. I said, "That's an unusual last name. Have you ever heard of Dennis Ray Steckler?" And she's like, "That's my dad." I'm like, "No, get out of here." And then I started paying attention to some of her test shots and stuff. And I'm like, by golly, she looks like him. And she was going to take me to meet her dad, which again, I was thrilled. Rat Finger Boo Boo, the Lemon Grove Kids. He made just all these really weird, obscure films. And I was supposed to go like meet him on Monday, and he passed away that weekend. And I'm like,
Ooh,
no.
ooh,
Well,
poor timing.
here's a good one. Aunt Edna's throwing out here. Kolchak the Night Stalker with a
That's what my parents watch.
yeah, I like that one a lot. And there's one on here. I can't remember what the name of it is. The something tapes, and it's like a somebody else's take on the Night Stalker. It was a TV pilot, and it never got made. But
Hmm.
Kolchak, that was I think a lot of people's introduction to things, and that was such a good series. And they stopped it because they like, well, we ran out of monsters to make anything about. They did the headless motorcycle rider, they did a vampire, they did all these things, and they're just like, no, it's done. So they stopped doing it. But then people would come along after them and carry on with so much more. But Night Gallery, that was probably that and the original Dark Shadows. Those are the ones that scared me the most. I was like in kindergarten when Dark Shadows was on, and I would go over to my friend's house and watch it and just be absolutely terrified. And same with Night Gallery, and it was I think in syndication at that point, but it came on Sunday nights after my parents went to bed. I was an insomniac even in childhood. They would go to bed. I would stay up and watch TV till the TV signed off and then read till I finally fell asleep around 3 or 4 and then get back up at 6 or 7 or whatever and get ready to go to school. But there were some night galleries that were absolutely terrifying when you're 5, 6, 7 years old. Now, do you like any of those type shows?
I need to explore those a little bit more. I've been doing some older TV series exploration. I think one that would probably surprise people is MASH. I've been watching MASH recently. That's another one my parents like, and I
I watched
decided.
that. My
Mhm.
landlady, uh, I just rented a room from this widow in St. Helens. That was one of her favorite shows, and I don't know what it was, like Hulu or one of those or something where you could watch every episode. And I have greater appreciation for them than I did, and I never really got into it the first time around, and same
Yeah,
with WKRP. It was just like, yeah, whatever. But I watch some of those now, they are actually genuinely funny. Like when TV was funny, the turkey drop episode, that's one of my favorite TV episodes of
that's what my dad
anything.
mentions.
And I'll say that on Thanksgiving. I was doing a stream this last Thanksgiving, and I think that's how I opened it was with God as my witness. I thought turkeys could fly. And of course, older people got the reference, and other people were like, what are you talking about?
Right? No, no.
Yeah.
I decided to jump into MASH more recently simply because for whatever reason I had multiple people who follow me and I'm friends with go, hey, you know who you remind me of? I'm like, oh god, who? And they said, Hawkeye, and I went, okay, I think I know who you're talking about.
I
Hold on.
I can kind of see that with the cadence and the delivery that you
Yeah.
speak.
The sheer
And
sarcasm.
you've got the sarcasm, you got the one-liners, and that was Hawkeye. He'd always go for the funny bit and
Yeah.
the straight man to a point, and then just take it a different direction. And I can see that in you. And I would consider that a compliment.
I take it as such. Of all the characters in that show to be compared to, I'll take Hawkeye. Better than Frank.
Yeah,
It's better than
everybody
Frank. So
everybody hated Frank. He would be one of those guys that his own men would have shot him, in combat.
probably, yeah.
Another one that I really enjoyed as a child was the original Blob, The Blob with Steve McQueen. That was a classic. I watched that on like the Late Late Show or something, and it was
The
just
Attack
this.
of the Strawberry Jelly.
Yeah, and there's so many. The World of Flesh and the Devil. That's not really a horror film. It's more of a dystopian, end of the world type thing. But do you ever get into the genre like in the '70s where it was nature fights back, where that was a lot of people were first getting into the whole pollution and clean water and clean air, and it got to the point where man had so ruined things that nature was fighting back. One of my favorite is Frogs. Have you ever seen that? With a very young Sam Elliott and I can't remember the female lead in that. She was later in Dynasty or something like that. Somebody in the chat will throw it up there. I'm sure. Joan
I've
Van Hart.
seen I've seen the original Blob, but I don't know if I've really delved entirely too much into man versus nature kind of stuff. At least
That was the
from
thing
that
for a
era.
while. It was piranhas or alligators.
Oh,
And then in the early '80s, late '70s, early '80s, you got into things like I think it was the Prophecy that had the mutated bear and Orca and things like that, where they killed the whale's baby and the whale was coming after him. And then of course Jaws. I mean Jaws was frightening, but I don't really consider it a horror movie, not in the truest sense. Do you?
I can see it as horror. I think a lot of people will stipulate what makes something horror and what doesn't, and that's totally fine. That's utterly subjective. But I see Jaws as a horror, if for no other reason. But 4-year-old Dice was traumatically scarred by Jaws,
Oh,
and took
I
me
knew people that
years to
wouldn't
watch it.
swim in a pool after they watched Jaws. Other kids,
Yeah.
it's there's no pools in there.
Well,
They
I
would,
had met Jaws. That was my traumatic experience, and then
yeah.
we watched Jaws many years later.
And what are some other? Um, the original, the precursor to Silence of the Lambs, Red Dragon, but it was called Manhunter. Did you
Yeah,
ever see the original Manhunter? I thought that was a
not yet.
much better movie than the Red Dragon remake, but it was again more of a psychological horror. And, you had serial killers and things in there, but it was frightening to consider that. Now I've got to ask you this: zombies. Where do you stand? Do you like the slow, brooding, coming after you zombies, or do you like the newer ones that can run lightning fast, or that can swim, or walk underwater and all that stuff?
I guess it depends on what I would be going for, because for a time I considered zombies to be a phobia of mine that's dulled in years since for obvious reasons. Um, if I'm going for something that I think would be truly terrifying, it would probably be the really fast, smart kind of zombies.
Yeah,
If we're going for more, shall we say, traditional, perhaps more eerie and creepy than outright terrifying, the slow walking,
yeah.
the
The
rather
Romero
mindless.
Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah,
That was one of the first films I saw that it didn't really scare me as much as it grossed me out, because that was one of the first films where they were eating people and you could sort of see what they're eating. They're pulling
yeah,
the
the
guts of the
viscera.
awful and things out the viscera out of people and
Mm,
and chomping on it. Ugh. But I knew people that walked out of it because it was just so gory, but I was digging it. I was like, yeah.
mm,
Night of the Demons. That I consider that a classic. What do you think of that? I think it's Linnea Quigley and I want to say
yeah.
Brent Stevens.
Possibly so. I know Linnea Quigley, of course,
Yeah,
and I can't quite remember her name, but she's
it
related
was,
to one of the Golden Girls.
yeah, just
Uh,
the dark haired one. I don't
yes,
think it was Brent Stevens, but it was somebody of that ilk, another scream queen. But at the time that came out, that was in the zine time of the '80s. Everybody, much like today, you have a website or you have a YouTube channel. Back then, you had a zine, a little thing that you cranked out, very small press. You might have a dozen subscribers, and I wrote for a little zine called Roadkill, and we reviewed horror films. And I actually got a hold of I can't remember the guy's name, but he was like the publicity person for Night of the Demons, and he sent me like all this press materials, slides, and an actual VHS dub of the movie. I had it before it ever came out in the theater, and it's like yes. So I had
bragging rights.
had a showing at my house. You got to see this, and there were like some. It wasn't a complete film. Like I don't think the credits were in there yet, but it was the film in its entirety, other than the bits and bobs on the end. And I know in the earlier days of the internet, the screeners were popular before they were able to digital thumbprint everything. And I used to get screener copies of stuff from certain nefarious sites before it ever hit the theaters. They would send copies around to media people, or if it was something really big, the Academy, because it would say that property of so and so studios for your consideration. Okay, I'll
Yeah.
give you my consideration. I'm not not a part of the Academy. Now, have you ever been in a film? And I've asked you to be in one that I'm working on, but have you ever done any acting? Have you ever had a part in a horror film, big or small?
Unfortunately, no. I haven't really, that I can say, been in any sort of big project. Obviously, I've done a lot of collaborations with people on other channels. I have been asked by yourself, as well as Ivan, my friend, the movie Void. He's currently, I believe, working on his next movie called. Well, he had a very interesting title for it. Not Insomnia, but something similar. And he wanted me to have a cameo in that. And I've read the script and I've read my little cameo, and I thought it was really cool. So I'm waiting to hear about that. So
Awesome, man. I
in the
I
future,
still I
I
still
really
got a
would like
part
to.
for you in this script that I've been working on for a couple of years. I keep getting it out, tinkering with it, and doing different things. But I basically explained the plot to you before. I explained it to Tiger Lily, and she liked the sound of it.
Yeah,
And I told her you're in the movie. You're kind of a jump scare in the movie, and I
of
thought
course.
perfect. But I won't give the plot away here because somebody will steal it and write it, and I'll be pissed off. But
So
it's and I've done a little bit of that before. I wrote a couple of short stories, horror short stories, And I had this when I lived in East Tennessee. I had a little indie production outfit locally that had read them online and contacted me and said, "We'd like to make short films out of a couple of these." And I said, "Sure, on two conditions. You let me write the screenplay from the story, the film treatment, and then I get to be on set when you film it." And the director agreed. And so I took the short stories, made them into these little scripts. And then when they got ready to film, I was on location. But what I didn't know, he put me to work. He's like, "No, you're not going to stand here and just watch. You're on a film set. You're gonna, everybody does something." And so I ended up, I got to like squirt fake blood on people. Um, at one point, there was a driving scene where this guy was a serial killer and he had picked up this girl. This was called sometimes Veronica. And I'm laying in the back of a car that's had the back seat removed, some kind of Buick. And I'm doing an angle up on the driver. The sound man's right beside me. He's got his boom. He's trying to keep it out of the shot. And then we had to switch places. And I'm over here doing an angle up on the girl, and he's got his boom over here. And in the meantime, we're in the back of the floorboard of this car. The back seat's been removed. The trunk is open. Our legs are hanging out the trunk, and there's a PA sitting back there, little girl with a flashlight with an orange cone on it, waving traffic past because we were actually driving on the shoulder of a busy road. And but it was like a film school boot camp. I learned so many tricks and so many ways to do things. One of the director's favorite things was to take everybody out to where the shoot was going to be, like in a van or some sort of rented vehicle, and then just leave. The vehicle would leave, and you were there until he called, wrap for the day. And I thought that's genius because, and that's what he said. Otherwise, people would get bored or they'd wander off and you couldn't find them or whatever. But if that's your ride, you better stick around. And craft services and catering, it was like turkey sandwiches and cans of Pepsi and stuff. I mean, it was a very low budget, no budget, shoestring budget type thing. But it was so much fun. I learned about blocking shots. I learned about lighting and using scrims and things to cast shadows and shooting day for night and vice versa. It was just like, but the most amazing part was watching the actors when I actually could stand around and I knew what they were going to say because I'd written the lines. And it's just like, oh my God, this is like playing God. I know what they're going to say. He's going to say this and she's going to say this. And then they'd say it. And it's just like, yes. But it was one of those, it was sweat equity. They had just enough money to do what they did, and nobody got paid. It was one of those where that's how sweat equity works. You build up equity in the film through your blood, sweat, and tears, and then if it makes any money above the line, they split that. But certain unscrupulous independent filmmakers will make sure that it never gets out of the red because they pay themselves, they pay this, they pay that, and none of the other people get paid. But
Yeah.
I never even got a copy of it. I was supposed to get a copy, and I've heard that it was dubbed into Spanish and played on cable TV in Mexico. So I'm hoping out there somewhere. And Tiger
Somebody must
Lily,
have a copy.
yeah, maybe you can tell me what that is in Spanish, but it was sometimes Veronica, and then there was a haunted house story called Strawberry Summer. I have no idea
Mm.
what that. Of course, they may have changed the title. Who knows? And I did have a Hitchcock-like cameo in sometimes Veronica. There was one scene that they shot in a bar, and the two guys were arguing, and I'm sitting at the other end of the bar, and I just kind of look over at them, and they both look at me and they're like, "What are you looking at?" And I'm just like, and I get
Same.
up and walk out. That was my Hitchcock moment there. But again, I never even I saw some of the dailies and stuff, uh, but it was fun, and I learned a lot.
Yeah. That's why I say I haven't technically been in any movies. I really don't care budget wise. If someone wants or likes my voice, the way I look, how I could act, potentially, it's not like I've had any experience with that. But
But
if
you do
anybody
have
wanted
experience
that,
on
then
camera, and you've got a
true.
presence. I mean, you
Like I'm,
you
I'm
are
comfortable with the
Dice.
camera, so
No, nobody can be Dice like you can be Dice.
nobody wants to try.
And basically, the part that I have in mind for you, it's you playing yourself, but in a different context. You'll love it, I promise you. But
I believe
some
this. Yes.
someday, It's
Sometimes.
written for you and with you in mind. You are this character. You know, when they say that in the movies, like Nicolas Cage is Dracula. You know, that sort of thing. You are this character,
Confidence
although
builder.
the character doesn't have a name yet.
That's all right. That's how we best work. We don't know who this character is, but you're it.
Now, I had a question about your accent.
Oh
It's
yes.
I can't tell. Are you Midwestern? Are you from up north? Are you certainly not from down south? Is it is that the way you talk? I get people that ask me that all the time because I do have a radio voice that I use. You know, welcome to the latest video today in this, and it's just kind of that sing-song delivery, almost like the sportscasters use. But this, like I'm talking to you, yeah, this is me. Now, is
Yeah.
that really how you talk when you're not Dice?
Yeah. I mean, pretty much anything and everything with perhaps a few exaggerations in videos and
But
whatnot.
that's what makes
That's
it,
me.
you know, when
Yeah.
you lapse into bonjour or you kind of
Yeah.
give a kind of classically trained acting delivery, sort of a
I'll take
Shakespearean
that.
almost. It
That's.
it
I mean,
works. Whatever you're doing, it works, and that's why I said
I'll
I
take
don't
it.
know why you don't have 1,000,000 subscribers because
People just haven't found me yet. It's all right.
you're just waiting to be discovered. You're the
Mm,
that creepy thing under the rock when they turn it over.
yes.
It's like, ooh, what's this?
When you
But
open the closet, there's something there.
it's Dice. Dice will pop out and
Yes.
tell you all about some horrible thing.
Hey, you thought I was going to kill you. Psych, sit down. We're going to be talking about horror. Come here.
But
Uh,
all my people, please go subscribe to their channel. It is amazing. They do such an excellent job over there. You won't be disappointed. And you're funny, you're irreverent, but it's still educational as far as horror is concerned.
we
If
try.
you're one of those people, if I'd had you as a teacher in school or professor in college, I would have learned whatever you were teaching me because you just so are engaging and just you're animated and you're passionate obviously about what you're talking about. And
Yeah.
that's catching. I mean, you couldn't do this if you weren't.
I think not. I've seen. I mean, I'm not gonna name any names, of course, because this is no offense to anybody, but I have seen some creators, not necessarily in horror, where I'm like, "Wow, are you all right? Do you want some coffee?
You're talking
You
about me,
okay?"
aren't you?
No, no. I even so. I
Well,
promise. I
there's
promise.
a few like that get on my nerves. Chills. What's your opinion on
Uh,
chills?
bless Chills. It's all right. He can do his own thing.
Number
It's okay.
15, Burger King foot lettuce. But you know
I
what
mean,
he raps also, he doesn't talk like that.
no, he doesn't, and
But
it's
people in the audience will argue with you. No, he sounds like that because he has a collapsed lung. No, he sounds like that because he's making him sound like that. Another guy that does true crime, criminally listed. Have you ever listened to him? He literally sounds
maybe
like a junkie on the nod. He's talking about this case, and he sounds like he's falling asleep. And it's
that's
like,
what
dude,
people
come
listen to
on,
fall. Thank you.
keep up. But yeah, Chris Holmes said he was curious about your accent. Tiger
Um,
Lily was asking me about your accent, and although I've
I
known
can
you for
explain.
3 or 4 years at least, I didn't know. So
Uh,
please explain.
it's a very, I guess, odd thing. I can't even really give you a clear answer about it. Just my regular talking voice. This is it. It is Midwest, I guess. I, of course, living with my, I really don't see very much of an accent, but of course, for others, they do. Born and raised in Colorado, now just moved to New Mexico, so very, very
It's
Midwest.
hard to place. It doesn't sound like anywhere. Now it's not
I
one
could
of
work
those
that.
flat Midwestern accents like Nebraska. You know, a lot of newscasters and radio people, they hire them because they have no accent. They could be from
Mm,
anywhere. But I think it's just the delivery or something. It's kind of almost husky, but it
yeah,
works. And then you've got that whole androgyny vibe going on, which I love. And I've slipped up a couple of times. I know I
yeah,
ask you your preferred pronouns, and I've tried to stick to they them. I practiced that all day, and I did slip up a couple of times, and I
that's all
apologize.
right. I'm very neutral about that. I say they them as a default because it just fits for me. But if you want to call me pretty much anything, as long as it's polite, then it'll be fine. It's fine.
I'm kind of the same
Uh,
way, as long as you don't call me late for dinner. But,
mm,
there's a quality about you that I would almost liken to like a David Bowie or somebody like that. You've got that charisma that
I'll
just
take
it's
that.
I can't explain it.
I think I confuse a lot of people in many different ways.
But that's a
But
good thing. That's like
yeah, I think it's fun.
because the first time I saw your channel was introduced, I'm like, "What on earth is this?" And you had, like, the coal eye makeup, like the Alice Cooper
Mhm.
thing going on, and I think you had the hat and maybe a little vest or something. You're very
Mhm.
dapper. I'm like, "What is this? Like from another planet or something?" And I'm just like, "I dig this."
Close. It's very close. Yes, we try to bring a little bit of class, to some of our reviews. I don't know why exactly. I think well, as far as like the accent thing, yeah, it's Midwest pretty much. But I didn't grow up. I grew up in a very suburban area, so I don't think we had a lot of that typical Midwest accent. And my parents don't really have much of an accent that way. And of course, when you watch a lot of television, like I do, where you get a lot of comedians, there was a period of time where I watched a lot of BBC. So you
Mhm.
pick up on accents, correct or not, you pick up on accents, and I'll throw
And
those in there. That's second
BBC
nature to
still
me.
has some of the best television comedy, the folk horror stuff, the Standing
Yeah.
Stones, and all that. I love it. Tiger Lily, want to say goodnight real quick. I love you, sweetheart. I will talk to you soon. Hope you get some rest. She's in Indiana, as they say down south, and
I'll see.
a couple hours later there, and she says, "Thank you for sharing your talent, Dice." I told her she's a horror movie fan. I was hoping Sandy would tune in tonight. She's a just a crazy horror movie fan. She'll go back and watch the replay,
Yeah.
and she'll like this. But so what's next? What's on the horizon for Dice Rolling?
Oh, well, let's see. There's a lot of different things. I've had some delays on what I was planning on doing, I'm afraid. That can only be blamed on real life.
Yeah,
Yay.
don't you hate it when you have plans and the best laid plans of mice and men, and then life gets in the way, and it's like,
Mm.
no, that's not supposed to happen.
Yeah, for me specifically, I guess it's just been different little technically minor physical issues that will come up that I've had to get
Yeah,
fixed and eh, it just throws
uh,
me off.
I'm not sure the reference here, but Chris Holmes says, "I knew I heard some Neil Hamburger in Dice's
Neil
accent."
Hamburger.
I'm not sure who Neil Hamburger is. Uh,
Uh,
Chris Holmes is throwing out some really obscure stuff here, and I'm loving it.
hey, go off, my friend. Yes.
And Tiger
Have to
Lily,
look that up.
good night, babe. I love you too. Thank you. Um, but yeah, I had some physical setbacks like that too. Found out that I had cataracts,
Ah,
and so I got the eye surgery. But I was able to get the intraocular lens implants. So now these are just reading glasses. I've got like 20/20 vision, except for up close. I've worn glasses since they figured out I was blind somewhere between kindergarten and first grade. So I was a little kid with the weird glasses, and I shopped in the Husky Boys section, so that's already two strikes against you there. But it's so nice to get out of the shower and I can see. I don't have to put my glasses on, which are fogged up by then, or I
yeah.
wake up in the morning and don't have to look for my glasses. And literally, my eyesight was so bad, I couldn't find my glass or couldn't look for my glasses until I found them.
Oh,
It's like one of those things. I needed a spare pair. So now I've
yeah.
got like
It's not good.
30 different pairs of reading glasses. I keep a couple in here. Got the little round Poindexters and got the turquoise or the tortoise shell. And it's a lot of fun. Now I don't have to wear them, but now I choose to wear them. It's a whole different ball game. But when they were doing my first eye, because you had to do them a few weeks apart, they discovered my blood pressure was like out of control. So I've had to go and get blood drawn and get on this medicine and that medicine, a lot of pranking around, and
Mm,
it caused me to put on a lot of weight. I put on like 85 pounds in no time because of some of the medications. And now, through my own pranking, I've figured out the dosages of the sweet spot. They had me on way too much, and it was actually causing my blood pressure to go up. It spiked. The highest I ever saw was 275 over some equally scary number. And that's
Yeah.
beyond stroke level. And in fact, the first 2 or 3 times my little blood pressure cuff wouldn't read it. It just said out. And Sandy was still here at the time. She called the paramedics. They had trouble getting a reading. And when they finally got it, it was 275. And they're like, yeah, you need to go to the emergency room. But then I get there and it's like, it's still high, but it's not scary high like that. And one of the doctors there, um, San Juan Regional Medical Center, and one of the emergency room doctors says, "Well, how do you feel?" I said, "Actually, I feel fine." And he looks at me like, "Well, if you feel fine, you don't have any business in my emergency room." And I
So
thought,
sorry. I was told to come here.
"What?" Yeah, the paramedics brought me here. Okay, dude. But I said, "Well, that contradicts everything I've ever heard." And he goes, "Oh, how so?" And I said, "Well, they call hypertension, high blood pressure, the silent killer because you don't necessarily feel bad. You don't feel any effects. It just is. And then you stroke out and die."
Hmm.
And he huffed off. And I complained to one of the other doctors, and they're like, don't pay any attention to him. Because
One
it's
of those. All right.
small. But yeah, I've had to deal with that, and I'm back on track now. This channel was dormant for a long time, and now I'm scheduling guests. I'm doing production videos, doing the like the classic tales of horror from LibriVox. It's volunteers that take books that are in the public domain, horror books, read those stories, and then release it back into the public domain. I take it and put it up on the channel here, and we have these all night marathons sometimes where we sit and listen to, excuse me, people do horror stories from the 1800s, early 1900s, and I love it.
Yeah, those are kind of like resuscitating old radio
Yeah,
in a way.
and I've done some of that too. I've done some of the old horror radio, the Lights Out and the Inner Sanctum and the Hermit's Cave and some of those. And they're done so well. I mean, it was literally theater of the mind because it had sound effects and actual actors and actresses and things doing their lines and not just somebody reading a book. And that kind of stuff thrills me. I love radio. That's uh, the interim, short term, near future plans. Tiger Lily and myself, we want to own a radio station. I'm going to make her the general manager, and I'm the on air talent. It's my station. I can go on whatever I want to and talk about whatever I want. Found one in the Phoenix area, and the people are like, "But you live in New Mexico." Well, they make a device, Broadcast Supply World. I can't remember what it's called, but you get an ISDN line run to your house. I can flip a switch and go on the air in Phoenix just like I'm sitting in the studio, and I can be sitting right here. So,
Hmm.
and it's a turnkey station. It's the owner's retiring. It's in the Snowbird area down there. It's an AM talk radio station. Has 2 million listeners on a 60 dB curve. You radio people know what I'm talking about. And on the digital broadcasting side, it has another million listeners in their cars. To me, that's a captive audience.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you get it's like the land, the building, all the equipment, the employees. If you want them, you can just literally come in and I'm the boss now. Do what I say.
We're gonna have some fun today. Come on now.
So, but I want to pose that to you when I get my radio station up and going. I want to give you a radio show. Which is that something you'd be interested in? Just
Possibly so.
do what you do on YouTube, but simulcast it to radio just to confuse the hell out of people.
Have people go, wait, what is this?
What is this? Why is this on my talk radio? What's she talking? Or what are they talking about?
Possibly.
Exactly, my
Yeah.
station.
There would be some things that I wanted to do that were kind of like that. I've had the concept of, everybody and their mother has a podcast now. I was playing around with ideas of what I could do with a podcast. I have some ideas for that. I've got, like I was mentioning, some stuff that will be coming, hopefully, possibly tomorrow, I believe, actually. For the first time in a while, I'm so sorry for such a delay. There will be
It's the
fat
holidays.
videos.
And
Oh, yes. There's the
what
holidays.
did you do something for Halloween? No, I haven't been over there to get caught up. I did
Uh,
31 nights of Halloween. I've done that like 3 years in a row. I had somebody the first year that I was going to do that. I had somebody say, "You'll kill yourself." We did 12 nights of Christmas, and it almost put us in the grave. And I did I did the 31 Nights of Halloween. This was the third year in a row. And last year, I just kept going and I didn't stop till I had done over a year's worth of a live stream of some sort every night or a show every night, pre recorded or live. I went 370 days in a row. I don't think I'll
Hey, you
ever be
win.
able to. I don't think I'll ever be. I win the internet. I don't
Yeah.
think I'll ever be able to top that. Now, some nights it was pre-recorded. It was just a LibreVox, but as often as I could, I'd go live, or I'd go live and introduce the stories and things, and it was just it. And you probably definitely agree with me on this, but it gets in your blood. You get on here, you
Yeah.
get in front of the camera, you're talking to all these people. Who knows where they are, what they're doing, what they even look like in some cases, but it's an audience, and I'm
Yeah.
just
They seem to find you entertaining. So hey.
people like us, we're born entertainers. People will sit and watch us and take time out of their day to join us in time out of our day to make it everybody's day, I guess. I don't know. There's a way I used to be able to say that and it made sense, but I can't do it anymore.
We'll come up
But
with a different phrase. Make
I,
merchandise. Yes.
well, you should hear some of my catchphrases that I run by Tiger Lily. Are you old enough? Probably not. But do you remember Paul Harvey, or have you ever heard of Paul Harvey?
The name sounds familiar, but
He
I'm
was
not.
like a radio guy, and he had these
Okay.
little syndicated bits called "The Rest of the Story" with Paul Harvey. Hello, Americans, and then he would come on and tell some weird little rambling tale for 3 or 4 minutes, and then at the end there would always be this twist that you weren't expecting, and now you know the rest of the story. Good day.
That
Well,
sounds vaguely familiar.
I want to do an updated version of that. I want to find weird little stories, put a twist at the end. And my catchphrase, the best one I've come up with so far is, "Ain't that some shit?" But I don't know how that would play. In fact, I probably shouldn't have even said it here because we are also live on Facebook,
Oop.
Twitch, and Twitter, in addition to
Hello,
YouTube.
Mr. Zuckerberg. Mm, I
But
didn't mean it.
anyway,
I'm so sorry.
and I even mocked up some T-shirts. I had some merch templates, and I thought that would look so good on a T-shirt. And Tiger Lily's like, "Well, don't say the word, but put a poop emoji there." And I'm like, "Yeah,
Ah,
that's kind of selling out. I'll do both. I could offer it."
the
Or I thought
loophole.
about just censoring it. Well, ain't that some beep? And then let people wonder. I mean, they're going to know what I said. Have you ever seen any of those unintentionally censored videos where they take something and they
Yeah.
censor it? It's not supposed to be censored, and it's hilarious.
Yeah.
Um, Remember that horrible, horrible song "Friday" by whatever her name was?
Yeah. I
There was
remember
like
that.
there was a death metal version of that, which was awesome, and then there was the censored version. Friday, Friday, gotta get pooped on Friday. And it was just,
Mm.
you could make up all these filthy lyrics in your head, and it was just so much more entertaining. So Rebecca Black, was that her name?
Yeah, I think
And
so,
that's one
actually.
thing, where her parents were wealthy, and they basically just paid people to make a music video with her in it, and it went viral, and she got all these views. And but then the other side of that, people absolutely hated her. She was getting death threats and stuff, and I'm just like,
I mean, you can hate the song, but come on.
but anything like that to me, like I've my degrees are in English and art history, but anything that moves people, whether it's to tears or anger, that's what I go for. If I
Yeah.
can make you cry, if I can make you soil yourself with fear, or if I can make you so mad you want to smash your computer, then I've done my job.
You've elicited an emotion, as they say.
Right. And that's
Yeah.
what it's all about. But Dice, we're running up on. We're actually right at the 2 hour mark, just a little over.
Mhm.
But I want to thank you for taking the time to come on here. And I know we got kind of off track at first. We didn't stick to horror the whole time. But hey, folks, how much you pay to get in here? Right, right.
If you expect everything to be cohesive,
If you didn't enjoy the show, double your money back. There you go. Can't be better than that. But speaking of, go ahead
yes.
and join the channel. I'm giving away a signed set of my books. The first 10 people that become members of the channel, going to hold a drawing, going to give away a signed set of books. I'll inscribe them any way you want them. And unless it's, I owe you $5,000. I'm not going to write that and sign it. But otherwise, what about you, Dice? Why don't you write a book about horror films and horror trivia? You could do it if anybody could. Have you ever
Uh,
considered that?
I have. I have a couple of ideas, possibly. Some nonfiction ideas and some fiction ideas. I've written a book. Technically, I have written a book. It's just not published yet because I'm still making sure that I'm happy with it. But yeah, definitely. I
Is
love writing,
it
so
paranormal, true paranormal, or supernatural in any way?
it's this one in particular. Well, I'll tell you the title, which was graciously bestowed upon me by a friend of mine, which I am eternally grateful for because it works. But it's called "It's Not a Phase," and it's
It's
a
not a phase.
werewolf movie, or not movie, but a werewolf story. Technically, a
I
little bit of
love it.
mystery in
I
there.
love it. I like that.
So
Thought you were going
I
to
would
say
also
I was a teenage dice rolling or something like that.
not quite. I'm afraid. I theoretically am not in the book. Theoretically, but it.
You are the book.
Uh,
You created the book. And that's the
yes, I
beautiful
am.
thing
Yeah.
about writing fiction. And I think Stephen King said that sometimes you have to kill your children. And he would talk about he would develop this character and nurse them along and get them to where they needed to go. And then he'd just smack
And
them
then
down.
just horror,
Yeah, just
horrifying
horrible
things.
decapitation and
Mhm.
dismemberment and things on. Sometimes you have to kill your darlings.
Yeah,
And
that's part of being an author. There, you got to torture your characters.
but I'm sure whatever you write, it's going to come up with. And that's something else I've been meaning to ask you. And you can tell me it's none of my business. It may be one of your trade secrets. But when you do your delivery, when you film your videos, are you looking at notes? Are you reading it off a teleprompter? Or is it just coming out of the head of the dice?
90. This isn't really a secret, I would say. Just because of how scatterbrained I can be, I have to write things down. Like my reviews, those are 100% scripted, but every so often, maybe 2 to 5% is improvised because I just happen to think, oh, this will be funny.
Mhm.
But most of the time, they are written down. Full scripts, usually maybe 3 to 5 pages long for reviews. Other things will be completely off the cuff. Live
Mhm.
streams, for instance, some
Yeah.
countdowns.
Like
So
this, I
yeah,
just get up here, wind me up, let me go. I talk till somebody pulls the plug or everybody leaves or whatever. But like I'm missing persons and mysteries, those because it is talking about real people and real incidents and things like that. We have writers, we have researchers, and I don't always go by the script because there's certain ways that I like to say things. And one of our writers, bless her heart, Emma, if you're listening, I love you, but she's British and she'll sneak in these British words or colloquialisms, and I'll have to stop and back up. And
what
uh,
is that?
uh, for fanny pack, when he went missing, he was wearing hiking boots and a fanny pack. She calls it a bum bag. I'm
Oh
like,
yeah,
well, because in Great Britain, a fanny is entirely something different than it is here. And petrol. He was last seen in the parking area of a petrol station. What?
the,
Or
the
or why?
aluminium of his
Whilst
automobile.
whilst this was happening, nobody talks that way. I don't even think British people talk that way. But she'll throw a couple zingers in there just to trip me up, I think. And then she said bum bag and then put in brackets. Please read it like this. But I'm not going to say bum bag. I'm sorry. I would get so many comments.
Have people go, wait.
What is a bum bag? Well, I've given the temperatures in Celsius before, and people or the distance in kilometers, and people say, "Don't do that. We have to think about that." So now I have to stop and you know if she's written it in they found his body 10 kilometers away. I've got to go and get my calculator out and put in the formula and say it was. And sometimes I'll say it was this many miles or this many kilometers because we do have listeners in other parts of the world that that don't measure things the way we do. But I like going off the script sometimes. Like I said, there's certain ways I like to say things that I'll do two or three takes. That's what takes me forever is the editing. What's your
Yeah,
editing process like? What's your workflow?
messy. It is very
That was
messy. I'm afraid.
pardon me, but that was just a little Paul Lynn there, I think.
Yes. Oh
You
yes. It's
Uncle
bless.
Arthur. You channeling Uncle Arthur there.
For whatever reason, I'm pretty decent at picking up some of how he spoke, and I can live with that.
I
Uh,
love Rollen. Some of those zingers on Hollywood Squares, and just he always had those one liners, those just out of so far out of left field, and it was funny. You know,
yes, very
you know
much so.
what's your
Lesson.
workflow, what's your editing process? And you're just like messy, and I could just hear
Messy.
Paul Lynn in my hand saying that.
Hmm.
But
So
I mean, and I mean that as a total compliment, and I hope
I'll
you
I'll
take
take
it
it,
that way.
even if you
But
didn't mean it as a compliment. I'm taking it.
and we'll talk shop here for just a little bit. What do you use to edit your videos? What do you have like? Uh, I'm trying. I can't remember all the things I use and all the things I don't use. There's Hindenburg. There's Adobe, not After Effects. That's the one I make my
Uh,
titles and stuff in my intros.
you would think after so many years I would know this. Let's
Pro
see.
Cut or
Premiere
uh,
Pro.
Vegas Premiere Pro. Is that what you use?
Yeah, I had been using Sony Vegas for a long time, and then at some point I realized that there were things that I just couldn't do.
Yeah,
So I do. I use Adobe Audition. I use Adobe Premiere. Every once in a while, Adobe After Effects for effects, of course. What
yeah.
I typically will use for stuff like recording raw footage. If it's just the audio, then it's Audacity, the staple. Streamlabs maybe for some gameplay. OBS Studio. It's really nothing terribly fancy, just because it's functional
But
for
it's
me.
well put together. I mean, whatever you do, it works. So I was
Yeah,
watching your videos, and I'm like, "Do you have a video editor? Because this is really good."
it's,
You know, missing
it's all
person.
me.
We have a dedicated video editor. I just, I could phone my part in. I show up, I read my lines, I pass it off. He puts together the stock footage and the pictures and this, that, and the other makes me look good. So I admire that. Anybody that, because here on this channel, I put together the videos. I'm the video editor and the audio editor, and I've got some good writers here. But
Yeah.
so far, until I get Sandy up to speed to help me with some of the editing, it's a one man show here, and it probably shows. But I love After Effects. I kind of taught myself that by getting templates and just going in and like, let's see what this will do. What will happen if I turn this or click that? And you just don't save it and then you load it back up and start fresh. And that's how I learned Photoshop. Uh, I had like the Photoshop when it was in beta. I've
Mm.
had Photoshop ever since before its inception, and I could do maybe like a tenth of what it's capable of. I can make thumbnails. I like the thumbnail that I made for you. You sent me that
Yeah,
headshot,
I liked it.
and
I
I
think it
cut
was
it
cool.
out and knocked the background out, put those uh, VHS boxes in the background. I thought that turned out really good.
Yeah.
Although in the cropped version, it looked like you were giving the finger because you were going like
Yeah.
this, but in part of it, you just saw like a fingertip, and I thought,
It's only this finger, I swear.
with that, it
Just
was
this.
this finger, but it would still be a total dice move to just give
Yeah.
everybody the finger.
With affection, of course.
Yes, with love and endearment. But anyway, thank you for joining. I hope we haven't gotten too silly here. You may not ever want to come back, but thank you for
Sir, you
gracing us
say you watch my stuff.
with
There's no such thing.
your presence. You'll be back. You're the what is it, the on Saturday Night Live, John Belushi, the thing that wouldn't leave. Do you remember those skits?
I've seen a few.
It was
Yeah.
like an unwanted house guest, and hey, you got any more of this chicken? And then they would recoil in horror, like it was some hideous creature. But
As
I
I like
hope
to
you
say, I'm
never
like a fungus.
you grow on us, right?
Mm, possibly until you get the cream, and then we don't.
But I love everything you do over there. I've got to get caught up. Like I said, I binge watched some last night. It's one of those things. I promise you, people that are subscribing to her tonight, that are discovering them for the first time, you will. It pulls you in. You watch another one and another one. It's like Lay's potato chips. You can't consume just one. You'll get a nice rolling addiction. And there's just so much of it. There is literally something for everybody, and you say that in your about on the channel, and I copped a lot of
Yeah.
that to put in the description here. Films, books, just media, anything to do with horror, gaming,
Yeah.
and just I could sit here and just gush over you, but I was just enamored of what you were doing the very first time I ever saw it. Just like, what is this? And there's a lot of creators on this platform, but every now and then there's somebody like you that comes along that's got that little, the French call it the je ne sais quoi, that
Yeah.
undefinable quality that it just works, and you make it work, and there you go.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here. It's
No, thank you
an
for inviting me.
and a privilege. And I want to get I've got almost 250,000 subscribers over on the big channel. I want to figure out a way to get. Have you ever almost disappeared in the woods, or you ever found a body in the woods, or any excuse I could get to interview you over there?
Oh, let's see. No, well, I'll put it this way. Not yet, but if I ever find somebody before calling the police, I'll call you.
I'll be the first to know. We'll
Yeah.
we'll break that story. Well, I appreciate you, Dice. Again, love, peace, blessings. Uh, Whatever you wish for, that's my wish for you too. So you got two wishes there. But Dice Rollen, check them out over on their channel. I think it's just with the new handles, it's
It,
youtube.com
it's
at
supposed to be easier.
Dice Rollen, and you don't
Yeah.
have to type in all the silly stuff. But my people, especially, please go over there and subscribe to Dice. You won't be disappointed. Do old Stevie the favor.
New video tomorrow, darlings. I promise.
And again, you mentioned to me that sometimes you could come into Farmington. Next time you're
Yeah.
out this way, I'd like to take you and your dad to lunch. You said he's a big UFO guy. I'd like
Yeah.
to sit. I'm probably about the same age as your dad. He may be younger than me. I don't know.
He's doxing my father. No, he's in his 60s, I think, about
Oh,
now.
okay. Well, I'm actually younger than your father, so not really excited to meet. I like to meet anybody that's younger than me. I will be 60 this year, so my 59th trip around the planet is coming to an end next Halloween. That sounds ominous, though. Just that year. There's plenty more beyond that.
Don't worry,
Just
don't
that,
worry.
that
It
one
continues. Yeah.
particular trip around the corner. I don't have any plans to go anywhere anytime soon. Hopefully, got the blood
Mm.
pressure under control. Otherwise, heart workups, everything's good. My A1C had been a little high through diet and exercise. I got that down to perfect because they were like, "Oh, you're pre-diabetic," and I'm like, "That's being a little bit pregnant. Either I am or I'm not." And they wanted to put me on metformin, and that's a lifetime commitment. When you start taking that stuff, you can't just stop. So instead, I cut out sodas. I watched what I ate. I cut out sweets almost altogether. Took a lot of the weight off that I'd gained, but I got my everything else under control. So smooth sailing from here on out. But look forward to whatever your next endeavor is there on your channel. I've subscribed with two or three of my. I mean, I've got the Steve Stockton. I've got this login. I've got a couple of other logins. We are all subscribed to you. So you're they them. I'm we. I'm the royal we here. Like
Plural. For a minute.
that used to. I used to read a lot of Charles Fort. I don't know if you've ever read any of the Fortean stuff. The weird, anomalous showers of flesh and blood and frogs and fish and coins and things. And he would always write about we. And I thought he was. First I thought he was talking about his wife, and then he talked about when he was little. He got so frustrated. He said that we ran into the wall head first because we were so angry. But he was talking about him, and I like that. Because
Yeah.
as a writer, if you do a bio or something, you have to write about yourself in the third person. Steve is a wonderful person. He grew up in East Tennessee, and I always feel weird writing that way. But I think it'd be funny to present it that way. We grew up in East Tennessee,
People go, oh,
the
hold on.
royal way, me, myself, and I. But anyway, thanks again. I'm getting silly here now. 2 hours and 15 minutes. But again, thank you. At least you're in the same time zone that I am, and I didn't keep you up past your bedtime. Hopefully.
Yeah. Well, we're trying to get better on that. What is a sleep schedule? What is that?
No such thing. I don't.
Mm.
I'm lucky if I sleep 2 or 3 hours a night. My favorite way to do it is to go to sleep or lay down about the time the sun comes up, and then 2 or 3 hours is about all I ever get. Then I'm back up and back at it, writing, recording, producing, editing. It's just insomnia is.
Hell of a
I mean,
drug.
it is what it is. Insomnia is a hell of a drug, but it is what it is, and it's actually afforded me the ability to live 2 or 3 lifetimes because, like, all my adult life, I've usually worked 2 full-time jobs because I didn't require any sleep, and, it's been enabled me to see and do and things, and when I was little even, my mom's like, "You would never sleep, you were afraid you would miss something," and I'm still that way, I don't wanna go to sleep and miss something. So,
Eh,
the bare minimum, and it obviously doesn't affect my health or I would have been dead. Although I will say, if I'd known I was gonna live this old, I would have taken better care of myself.
That's
I
a
never
good
thought I'd get
thing.
out of my 30s. I thought that's it. That was a horrible decade. And if I could have a do-over, I'd like to do my 30s over and do them differently. But no regrets. It is what it is. It all brought me to here.
Mm.
And my dad always told me, find something you love to do, find a way to get paid for it. You'll never work again in a day of your life. But it took me until I was like 50 years old to find that thing. But here I am at least.
Yeah,
So
that's
I'm
hey, that's what
basically,
I'm trying to do.
I don't know about you, but I'm basically unemployable. I mean, this is it. I can write books.
I
I,
plead the
I
fifth.
can talk on here. I've worked in call centers and things like that, and those are meat grinder. 100 calls
Mhm.
a day, back to back to back to back to back. Some silly problem. And literally, it's like the IT crowd. Have you tried turning it off and back on?
Have you
That was
tried
causing
hitting your
so
head
many
against it?
problems. I actually had a guy, I was doing desktop support one time, had somebody call the help desk, and he said, my keyboard doesn't have an any key. And he was being serious. This was Windows 3.11, back in the day when people were first getting used to computers in the workplace. And I said, what? And he said, well, the software is telling me to press any key to continue. This keyboard has no any key on it. Can you get me one? And I wanted to tell him, just take the keyboard and just bash your head on
Yeah,
it as
just
hard as you
smack your
can.
face against it. You'll
I,
get there in
I
time.
nicely explained to him, literally, it means any key, pick one.
Whichever one you want. You have
Be a
so many. Go ahead.
be an X. It could be, this, that, or the other. Your pick. And he's like, really? Yeah, it's magic.
Welcome to the modern era, sir. Yes, come in.
3-3-1 for the win. Actually, my favorite was Windows 95. That was just that was the one where I really saw the power of the computer. I wasn't even a Windows guy. I was in a Commodore. I'm a Commodore Amiga. That was my jam. Multitasking, stereo sound, color right out of the box on the old IBM clones and stuff. That was all upgrade cards and stuff. The Amiga was revolutionary, but they just dropped the ball.
Mm.
Anyway,
And now
we've
we have
wandered.
bugs.
Yeah, we've wandered far away from horror here. So what's your idea in closing here? And I promise I'll let you go. What is going to be the next big thing? Do you believe we're finally going to get the 3D hologram movies where we can, it projects up in your living room and you can watch the horror from any angle, or
Mm.
is that just pie in the sky? That's like Jetsons flying cars. Will that ever happen?
I mean, it sounds interesting. It certainly sounds interesting.
Because the
Uh,
technology's gotten better. They have these holograms. I mean, they've got Tupac and even Homer Simpson appearing
yeah.
on stage. There's a video out there of what purports to be the Pope, which is a hologram. He's standing in St. Peter's Square waving to the masses. He
No
turns to
one would know
walk
the
away
difference.
and he's just gone. And right, how would you know? And with the deep fakes and everything that they can do now, I want to
It's
I want to create an AI program that can sound like me, and I'll go on vacation and let it
voila.
record scripts. There you go. We'll make a
We make
dice
money.
roll.
We're not even here. Ha.
We'll make a dice roll and hologram,
Ooh,
and
good luck.
then put that to work, and then you could go
Mm.
lie on the beach or hide in the woods or whatever. Well, now, that's a question in closing. What's your idea of recreation? What do you do to get away from horror? Because I know, like missing persons and mysteries, and same with some of the true crime stuff, that gets under your skin,
That
especially the
yes.
missing kids. I have to go watch fail videos or watch funny cat videos or
Mm.
go somewhere and think about something else. Or do you need an escape? I mean, if this is you, this is your life, you might not want to be away from it. You might be
Yeah.
totally fully immersed in it 24/7.
I think it's pretty much that. It's. I mean,
There's no guilty pleasure. You don't go watch Teletubbies or anything like that to get away from.
this is the real horror here. We have the complete collection of the Teletubbies. This is scary. Uh, no, well, I'll incorporate horror wherever I can, wherever I think it would be really fun. That's what ignites my interest in
It's
most things.
it's an
Uh,
avocation. It's a
yeah,
calling. This is what's been laid upon your heart
yes.
Bring the horror. Bring the horror to
much
the masses, whether they
much
like it
to the
or not.
dismay of my family.
So
So things that don't usually involve horror. I don't know. I'll watch. There are some things that I'll watch that I know have nothing to do with horror, like MASH, Mork and
that
Mindy.
that
I
would
I
kind of
love.
shocked me when you
Yeah,
mentioned that. I thought I wouldn't have never pictured you as a MASH fan, but
no,
it just
I'm
in
slowly getting into it.
some strange way it makes sense. You would say Mork and Mindy. Now is that
Yeah, Mork
because
and
of
Mindy.
the Colorado reference there?
Kind of. Yeah,
The
I'll cosplay. There's stuff that I'll cosplay. Mork, I've cosplayed.
You would be the
Uh,
perfect Mork. I'm telling you,
I
I would pay to see that.
if
There
you
you
give me
go.
enough sugar, we're on it.
Dice Rolling, the one person show. Will four wall of theater. You get up there, cosplay, do characters. You can do Hawkeye, you can do Mork, and we'll pack the house.
Yeah. There's a surprising number of cosplays that I've done just out of my closet, as I say, closet cosplays. So if I really put my effort into it, I'm sure it'd be very interesting.
That's
But
amazing.
anytime that
See,
I can create,
that's a
I'm
different
happy.
facet of Dice that we've never seen. You saw it here first, folks. A scoop here. Maybe not. I guess you've done it on your channel and talked about it, but
Not not so much on my channel, but there are pictures that I've shared on social media. So
Dice secrets. Dice reveals all. Dice spills the tea on themselves.
mm,
Not literally.
frequently.
That could be that could be painful.
Mm,
Just making a cup of McDonald's hot coffee, and then you could sue and have millions of dollars to do whatever you want to do
sure.
with.
We'll
All
sue the
right,
clown. Yes.
I'm really going to get out of here and let you go. But again, namaste. Thank you for being with us. You let me know the other night that you're actually a practicing witch. You mentioned that in the chat. We'll have you back sometime. I'd like to hear all that about whatever path you have, if there is one, or if you're just I don't know, I don't mean it insultingly, but like a kitchen witch or just an everyday witch, or if you
I say
follow,
eclectic.
somehow I'm not surprised. That's just eclectic. If there's one word to describe you, I would say eclectic. Your
Yeah,
taste, your persona, your delivery.
it's very gathered in many different ways. We'll put it that way.
Well, it's and I don't want to say it's affected, but it's cultivated. You've thought
Sure.
about these things. I don't think there's the comedy, even that's you have that comedic timing. It's not a knee jerk reaction. You got that lightning quick comedy brain that just you can throw a one liner in there or say something funny when nobody's expecting it.
That is usually my goal. Yes, throws my family off all the time.
They've got to just I don't know. Sometimes my family was the same way. Just how do you even come up with what made you think that? Why did you do that?
I don't know. You made me.
Yeah, really. And I was supposed to be a '63 Corvette. I had one older brother, 17 years older than me. He was getting ready to marry his high school sweetheart, move out. My mom and dad were going to get a Corvette convertible and travel the country sometimes, like Todd and Buzz on Route 66. And surprise. So, yeah, my dad was mad. He'd say, you're supposed to be a '63 Corvette.
Someone got that order mixed up.
Yeah. But same thing. I'd go to family get-togethers, things either side of the family, and I would just sit there like I cannot be related to these people. They liked hunting and football and all this stuff. I liked art and books. I was the weird one. And there was even a time when I knew I was adopted. My mom, I pestered her. I was little, and I even pestered her so much. She's like, "No, here's your baby picture. This is you in the hospital right after you're born. I look like a drowned rat." But I'm like, okay, well, maybe they switched babies on you or something then. But there you go. But I like that. An outsider among the outsiders, beating your own drum, doing your own thing. Mad respect to you, Dice, and thank you again. Thanks everybody that tuned in tonight. Tomorrow night, don't forget, here on YouTube and Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch, Thin Lizzie Borden is going to read tarot and oracle cards, and she's got a fortune telling deck. She can even do yes or no questions this time. And everybody that gets a reading, your name will go on a ticket. I've got some valuable prizes that I'm going to give away over here. I've got signed copies of my books. I've got some unopened oracle decks I'm going to give away. You could start your own oracle thing. I've got some sage that's still in the package. Got all kinds of fabulous prizes. Dice, come over and then let her read your cards or feel your head or whatever you want to have done. Read your palm.
Sure.
Once your palm red, then she'll take the brush out and paint it red. There you go.
Yeah. Put that on a piece of paper. There you go.
All right, folks. Thanks again. On behalf of Dice, Rollen, and myself, and please go subscribe. You will not be disappointed. But everybody have a good night, good morning, good evening, whatever it is, wherever you are. On behalf of Dice and myself, we'll see you a little farther on down the trail. I'm Steve Stockton. I'm out of here. Say hi to your animals for me. Thanks again. Good night, everybody.